good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dylan, and Stu. Your movie podcast that today is discussing the Lord of the Rings, maybe the most iconic franchise, one of the most iconic franchise ever to grace our screens, has a new movie coming out this weekend with Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim. First time they've made a movie, I think, since in 10 years. I think the last The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, came out in 2014. So that's exciting. We've all watched that movie, and we're going to discuss it here today, along with the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. We forgot about the Hobbit movies on purpose, not only because they're super long, and that would have been like an insane episode, but also because we didn't want to talk about them. But we're not alone today. Connor is gone with some personal reasons, but we have Joel Vet's movies back on with us. And I was thinking, the last time you were here, about 5 months ago, which is kind of crazy. I remember messaging you right afterwards, and I said, hey, what movie's coming out would you like to be back on for? And you said this one, and here we are. Look at that.
Yep, I'm very glad to not be talking about The Hobbit because even though everyone in my comments will swear that is like an amazing trilogy, they're great, I cannot stand those movies.
It's funny you say that because I talked about them too, and I see a lot of people defend them and say they like them, and I think it's just I'm not quite sure why, because a lot of people do hate them too, but they do have like legitimate defenders, and I find that strange.
Yeah, it was like the top comment in my last video about the War of the Rohirrim. It was like, oh, if you don't like the Hobbit movies, your opinion's automatically invalid. Like 400 likes on that comment. I'm like, okay. Guess my opinion's invalid. I cannot stand those movies. I like the first hour and a half of An Unexpected Journey. Everything else, way too much.
I like when they're actually like adapting the book, and then they just start making shit up, and it's like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, I think the book is like one of the greatest fantasy books of all time, and then if they made it one film, could have been great.
Yeah, even if they made it like a movie that was like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, like people would have watched it and loved it. Like Return of the King is almost 3.5 hours. They just wanted to make money. It was rough, but glad we're not talking about those.
I would say if you just listen to them do interviews about The Hobbit, they plainly say, yeah, there's a lot of shit we didn't know what we were doing. We kind of just made it up as we went along. It's funny, they have defenders, but you can see literal reasons from the cast and crew why it probably didn't work out as smoothly as the Lord of the Rings movies did.
Yeah, they still made a lot of money though. I mean,
it's good for them. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, we'll get into War of the Rohirrim, but that's why I'm shocked to see how little it's making. But I was going to say, Joel, have you read the books? Because you said you love The Hobbit, so you've read the Lord of the Rings as well.
Yeah, I have read the books. I've read the books, and I've done the audiobooks with Andy Serkis reading them. I love those too. He's just, I don't know, very underrated in Hollywood. Like, he's behind the scenes of so many things, and I feel like people don't even know who he is, honestly, a lot of the general public. But these movies themselves don't even work as well if you don't have Andy Serkis in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Stone, you let off with that Gollum voice. That caught me by surprise. But
I was going to ask you, how was that?
It was a bit upsetting, but it was pretty good. I would say, but all jokes aside, that voice is really, I mean, one of the most iconic voices ever in a movie. I think kind of universally recognizable. It has to be weird being him and knowing you kind of crafted that and hearing people do it, and it really is pretty cool.
I haven't done that probably in 10 years, so I was really dusting that off for this. So
you were practicing all last night, I'm sure.
I was. I literally, with my wife, I was like, let me see if I can do this again. But it's funny you mention that because I used to do it when I was a kid because it's just like a version of Stitch. It kind of just sounds like Stitch, but with a little bit more personality to it. A little bit more darkness, I guess, with Gollum. But
well, I'm very glad that they got him from that iconic role for the voice of Nolan, Venom of the Last Dance. Definitely a great use of the voice there. His 7 seconds of screen time. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
I saw somebody post on Twitter like after Kraven the Hunter, which I still haven't seen, by the way. But they were like, "What the fuck was the point of this? If y'all are just done with it, like, what are we doing here?"
Yeah, there just was no point. It's like setting up like a Thanos.
They're just trolling.
And
They're just trolling.
Never gonna see Thanos, but yeah.
I was wondering, like in the audiobooks, now that you mentioned it, I'm assuming does he do the Smeagol voice?
Yeah, he does that voice. But it's also like he's very good at doing other character voices too, in a way. Like he's not doing the movie impersonations, but like he has very distinct. Like since I had read him before, I was like, that's the only way I can really do audiobooks. If it's something I'm very familiar with, or else I'm like, I'll get distracted and zone out for 10 minutes, and then I'm like, what on earth is happening if it's something brand new? But with a property like this, like I would definitely recommend him there. He did that and The Hobbit, and they're all pretty great recordings of them.
Nice.
Have you guys read the books at all? I know.
Yeah, a couple times.
Got him over.
We kind of, I mean, both my parents really liked Lord of the Rings, so they kind of got me into it when I was young, and then I saw all these in the theaters. But yeah, I mean, I think the books are incredible. I think kind of a place I wanted to start talking about the Fellowship was the castings, and I think it's interesting too, Joel, if you've read the books, like, how did you feel about them? Is there anyone that you would have changed, whether it be like a big role or a small role? What were kind of your favorite casting choices? Like, how did you feel about the cast they put together?
I'm still upset that there's no Tom Bombadil in the movies. That's my biggest thing. I wish they jammed him in there. It's already a long movie. Just give him like 2 minutes. Otherwise, I think this is like one of the best cast things of all time. Like that's why it works, I think. Especially like Ian McKellen, obviously, as Gandalf. I think that's one of the greatest just pure castings of all time. And I felt so bad for him going back to The Hobbit briefly. Those videos of it's like him literally breaking down on the green screen set with nobody around him.
Devastating.
Like you cannot do that to Ian McKellen. But no, the cast is what makes this so great, I think. Because I honestly don't think there's anything I would change. But I also read the books after I saw the movies. So that definitely changes.
I feel like kind of shaped your...
Yeah, I went in with the prior knowledge. If it was the other way around, I might be like, oh, I would change this. But I kind of had the idea. And I feel like even though obviously they leave things out, it is still like a pretty direct adaptation. It's not like they're changing stuff that much from the books. It's just obviously changing for the medium. So it's not like, I don't think there's anything I would change as of right now, really. Like I said, just other characters like Tom Bombadil, bring him in. That's it.
Yeah, and the Tom Bombadil thing is interesting because like he has a pretty big impact on the story. Like, for example, he gives Merry his sword, which is the reason the Witch King dies. Like the Witch King doesn't die because Eowyn stabs him. He dies because Merry like cuts his leg with the sword that Tom Bombadil gave him. Then in the movie, that never happens. Aragorn gives him his first sword, which he then loses. So the reason the Witch King dies just isn't actually there, and it's just kind of a mystery in the movie. But that was basically because of what the sword that Tom gave Merry, which kind of like gets rid of the protection that the Witch King has. So they never explained that in the movie. But he's such a cool character, and he's, Tolkien kind of wrote him as just this like standalone force in that world. He's so interesting and cool. I just wish he had been there, but. Like you mentioned, they have so much to fit into these movies, and I do get it.
This is gonna be a fun episode for me just to watch you guys. I have no idea who Tom Bombadil is. So I have read the books, and I've watched the movies. I probably always watch them together. I feel like everyone always does. They don't just watch one. I guess that's the point of a trilogy. But I've probably watched them all now 3 times. This is probably my 3rd time watching them, and I didn't watch them for the first time, so I was like 15 or 16 probably.
Have you kind of enjoyed them the same every time you watched them, or have you appreciated them more or less, or what's that been like?
I really enjoyed them. I mean, the thing is, the more you watch them, there's a lot of things they throw at you. It's a big world. So the more that you watch them, the more it's easy to follow who's related to who, where they are in the vicinity of Middle Earth, and what are the dynamics between the characters and stuff like that. When I'm like the first time watch, shit, I thought Gondor and what's the other
Rohan.
King Rohan were like the same place. Really confused with that. I thought the armies were the same. I mean, I was like 15. I was dumb as shit, but yeah, it's a lot more fun, and you can like. There's so much in these movies that it's you don't. The fact that I don't have to think about that anymore, trying to follow the story, and I can enjoy other things, is really great. And I feel like that'll just continue as I rewatch them until I die, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are definitely a thing that grew on me over time. Like, I remember liking them the first time. Like, I didn't have Letterboxd at the time, but it would probably have been like, oh, a 4-star. I really like this. And then again, when you can kind of not have to focus on taking everything in, then it like, oh, you can actually appreciate everything going on when you're actually rewatching. I've also probably only seen them like, I think 3 times each, maybe 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said, circling back to the casting about how they really nailed this, I think when you're doing anything like this, whether it be like this or Harry Potter or whatever, like both of those things are built on the cast. And like you can write a good movie and you can understand the material and but if you don't have the right people there, it really doesn't matter. And like there are so many moving pieces with this cast. Like they offered Aragorn to Nicolas Cage, which would have been just like absolutely insane. I'm not sure what that would have been like. Also, not sure how that would have changed his career. But
Also, wasn't there also someone else that
Russell
literally
Crowe,
started? Who
Daniel
started
Day-Lewis,
as Aragorn though? I'm
Stuart
pretty sure.
Townsend. Stuart
Yeah,
Townsend.
that because
Yeah.
wasn't he literally there for like the first day? If I'm or like he was set to start, and then like
Yeah.
literally 24 hours later, it's like okay, now we're bringing in the new guy.
Peter, yeah, I think Peter Jackson literally saw him and was like, "Yeah, sorry, dude, you're not it."
Yeah, they said he looked too young, which is understandable. But Daniel Day-Lewis, that would have been cool. I'm sure he would have taken it very seriously. But Viggo Mortensen, I mean, he's probably. I don't know if it's the most iconic character from the franchise. It probably is, outside of Gandalf. I mean, it's a really good casting. Also,
I'm looking at a list right here, and the only one there's a bunch of people like Sean Connery, Uma Thurman, Christopher Plummer, a bunch of people. The only one I think might have worked, and I like this, is Ethan Hawke for Faramir. I think that could have worked. I would have liked to see Ethan Hawke in this.
Ethan Hawke's kind of small, no?
Like build or height?
Yeah, just like I think he's a smaller guy. Like I don't really see him as like.
Well, he said Faramir, right?
Faramir's
yeah,
Faramir. Faramir's not that big.
Boromir.
Yeah.
He's not like hulking, I don't think. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, let me explain this to you. Faramir and Boromir are brothers. Just kidding.
Oh, thank you.
yeah, you're gonna be the new lore expert now on that.
Also, speaking of Boromir, I think Liam Neeson was considered for that as well, which I think would have been good. I think he would have done a nice job.
I think he's too tall. I'm pretty sure Liam Neeson's a tall guy. I know we're just talking about body here, not like act. Obviously, they're all good actors, but
You know who the tallest person, or I think the tallest, or one of the tallest people in the cast actually was? It's John Rhys Davies, whatever, who played Gimli. He's like,
really?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say we're talking about a franchise that has like the hobbits and like makes Gandalf look like 30 feet tall, and we're like, oh, this person's too big or small, but like clearly they can make it work with anyone in this franchise. Like,
which is
they had the magic.
It's so cool, and so much of that stuff is just literally perspective and how you set up the camera and I feel like it's just, and when I go back and watch these in general, I feel like there's so many little things like that I just, maybe when I was a kid I didn't quite appreciate as much, but now I'm just like, the amount of detail and thought that went into this is ridiculous, because all that perspective stuff works so well, and it's like little like simple, subtle things, but it looks so good and it holds up really nicely.
I'll say my wife watched this with me. She's not really into fantasy that much, but she would just. I mean, I spent 9 hours, 10 hours this past 3 or 4 days watching it, so of course she would just sit down a little bit and like look at it, right? But every time, I always love it when the hobbits are like shown walking away, like with Gandalf or something, and I'm like, that's a little kid, right? Because they have to make them look so short, and you don't have to show their face anymore. Like that is literally a child walking with Gandalf right now. And I love it. They look like 2 feet tall.
I feel like all that being like practical stuff is why, like, I feel like these honestly, not, I don't think the Harry Potter movies don't hold up, and I don't think it needs a remake, but I definitely think these hold up better visually because of just how much is real and real locations. And I mean, there's some things obviously that aren't like, oh, it doesn't look incredible, but there's nothing that stands out and it's like, oh, this looks terrible. Like the troll in the first Harry Potter movie looks absolutely terrible nowadays. Like it looks like, I don't even know, like a GameCube thing, and it's not good.
Wait, Harry Potter started the exact same year as this, right?
99.
2000. Oh, 99?
Yeah.
I thought the first movie came out in 2001. No.
I thought it was 2000 or 2001 also.
I could be wrong.
I think you're maybe thinking about the books came out in 1999, but the first movie came out in 2001.
Yeah, it looks like 2001. Yeah, Sorcerer's Stone.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even really think, if you're trying to compare, like, it's tough. I think partially because of what you just said, Joel. Like visually, those movies, the first 2 or 3 don't really look great, but also just like the kid actors are so bad. Like you literally watch all those actors get so much better throughout the course, which is really cool to go back and watch. But like throughout the course of the movies, but it's funny because you have all these like older veteran like Shakespearean stage actors, and then you have just like, you know, the kids just kind of talking.
Well, not to get on a tangent, but that's kind of why I'm worried about the new series, is that it looks like they're getting good actors, but it's kind of just TV actors that they're pulling in to like, because that's who you're going to get now to do a TV show that runs for whatever they want it to be, 10 years. You're not going to get like super heavy hitters, but like, I don't know. I'm worried about that new reboot, but I do agree. The first 2 books, I love all the books of Harry Potter. Like I take the Harry Potter books over Lord of the Rings personally. Just like that's just my franchise. I know that's blasphemy, but I can't stand those first 2 movies because they're just like, it is painful to sit through.
Chamber of Secrets as well, being 3 hours, is like one of the most ridiculous runtimes of any movie ever. And like the fact that we all sat through that as kids is hilarious. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of look back and compare, given that these were kind of happening at the same time. That was such a good time too for like movies. Like I just remember the theater experience for both of these franchises being so good. People dressed up and just really excited. So, you know, kind of missed that. But
Well, I was like 0 or 1 when these were all coming out, so sounds great and all, but
it was great. Let me tell you. I mean, I was 7 when the Fellowship of the Ring came out. So I mean, I was young, but I was there. It was awesome.
That's it. You're talking about Chamber of Secrets being 3 hours. Do you want to get into the first Fellowship of the Ring for 3 hour longs? Yeah. I told Dan I don't know how we're going to discuss this because I don't think we need to recap it.
It almost feels like it could. I don't know, not to hostile take over your podcast. I feel like you could almost just bounce around all 3 because like it is the one story really. Like it's kind of just, if you're talking about all 3 anyways, it's like, oh, this is. I mean, it was written originally to be the one book, and that's definitely what you can see. I think that's why it works so well as a trilogy. It's just like seamlessly. Oh, it's like part 2, part 3, or not starting over or anything.
Yeah,
I think an interesting question maybe to start is just from like a high level view. How do you guys feel about each of these movies? Because I do feel like they do feel very cohesive, and it does feel like one seamless story. But I feel like each of these movies has a very particular feel to it, and they are all kind of their own thing. And I feel like that makes it so that people have fairly strong thoughts on their preference between them. But I feel like especially the Fellowship of the Ring kind of stands out from the other two, and I think that's purposeful. I think this is the most cheerful of the three, but also at the same time, there are some moments here that lean into like kind of horror, and I feel like that works really well because you're kind of in the shoes of the hobbits being introduced to this entire world that they have literally no idea about. And there's just, I feel like it puts you really nicely into their shoes, kind of stepping out into the world and seeing like ring wraiths and, orcs and this and that. Like it's all fresh to them, and it's kind of the same way with the audience, I think. But this one feels different to me than the other two in a way.
Like you said, I think it works perfectly with the audience because you're getting introduced to this world for the very first time, just like the hobbits. So it's it's just more contained. It's just easier to follow, and it's perfect how they introduce everybody because this is just the introduction movie. It really is. And then, looking at this movie to the Return of the King and how many places you've been and, everything you barely get anything in Isengard. Isengard, that's where Saruman is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing good. Anyways, but a lot of people think it's like D&D, as in like these guys are just like getting together and they're like going on a quest together. Like you have like a party of just random like dwarves and elves and humans and hobbits, and they're just like, let's band together, get this one little quest, and we go on our adventure kind of a thing. And it's just kind of fun. And like you said, there are some horror elements, but I think that's good for the viewer as it shows you kind of what's going to be in the future. Especially with, I forgot freaking when Kate Blanchett goes all evil. I was like, holy shit. She's like, grrr! I was like, holy no. Whatever they did visually there was like really different.
And the sound too with her voice. And I think just like, I love that scene because Galadriel is someone where like if she did take the ring, like it's just kind of game over. I think that's what's so interesting about the story is like, and I kind of talked about it in that video yesterday, but you see the ring tempt a lot of different people, whether it be more subtly or not so subtle. And it is interesting to think about, like, what if person XYZ had taken it and tried to do good with it, and would that have worked, and what would have happened? But that scene is really, really good, and it also works because it contrasts so nicely with like what her character is about and how like calm and gentle and why she is. I like that a lot.
Kind of just going back to how you said like this being the introduction. Like obviously this is what inspired like 99% of fantasy stories, but I feel like it gets that better than so many other ones. Like so many other fantasy just books or series I've tried to start reading. It's like, yeah, we're gonna immediately throw you into 3 different made up cities. Every character has like 17 different names. Here's all this, like you're 5 pages into the book and it's throwing everything at your head. This just starts, you're in the Shire, everything one by one. Oh, here's the wizard first, and then you get out into the world, and oh, here's some of the darkness. And it's just, it takes the time to really like slowly roll all that out to you. Because if it was just like immediately throwing you into like the ring wraiths and everything else, I feel like in the first scene you'd be like, what is happening here?
I was gonna say we haven't talked about it yet, but I think this is a good point to bring it up. I haven't watched them, but I'd be curious what you guys think about the extended editions. Because the reason why you say that is I know I've only done research on it, but I know there's like a kind of pivotal moment, or not pivotal, but very informational moment at the beginning of this movie when it comes to the extended edition, where Bilbo is just like explaining what hobbits are and how they kind of operate in the Shire. And I feel like for somebody who is new to Lord of the Rings, that might have been pretty important, and maybe it shouldn't have been left out. Because you're just like, these are hobbits. I don't know if you need more context. Or like, these are hobbits. They live in the Shire, away from everyone. Is that all you need?
I've only watched them once, and to me, like, the movies are all like, I think they're all paced pretty well, but it throws off the pacing so badly. Like, and there are moments that just don't need to be in a movie. And I think, they in all three of these, they actually did make a good amount of changes from the books, and they did move a lot of things around. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like Shelob, for example, like all that takes place in the Two Towers in the book, but they like the way the story works. They just kind of took that and then put it into the Return of the King. So like, it's a lot of like cut and paste to make it make sense. The extended editions, they're not better, like they're just not, in my opinion. But it's a lot of like small moments and conversations that can add a little bit. But I think they made really good choices in terms of what to leave in and what to leave out.
What about you, Joel? Have you watched them?
Yeah, I have actually. Like the first time I ever was gonna watch these movies, I was like, oh, Fellowship of the Ring extended edition, and that was a mistake. I don't know why I was possessed to do that, and then I like didn't watch the other ones right away, and then I like went back and I'm doing this with just the theatrical, and now that I've seen both, I 100% agree. Yeah, I understand like there's people that swear by that are like in love with this franchise and just want every minute of it, but they are worse movies 100%. Like it just simply slows down way too much in some points, and like you said, there's scenes that really just shouldn't be in a movie. Like I would probably be the sucker if they released like the Dune like 4 hour cut and it was terrible. I would still watch it. I'd be like, this is the greatest thing ever, just because I want more of that. So I understand why people love it, but yeah, they're kind of brutal to get through if you're like, even if you're someone that's only seen the theatrical like once or twice, I still don't think it's a good idea. Like you have to be someone that's like, I've seen this like 10 times plus. Now I'm going to watch these, because otherwise you're just going to be like, this is just boring.
I would say, yeah, I agree. Well, I would say wait until these fans find out that y'all don't like the Hobbits and you don't like the extended editions, or come for me out.
That's fine.
They can do that. I'm very familiar with every sort of hate comment you can get, and I'm sure I know Dan, I know you are too. I get a good laugh at your comments sometimes. Some of them are just like,
yeah, it's something. I wanted to quickly touch on what you were kind of saying, Joel. In terms of how this is all introduced, like I think the good thing about Middle Earth is not the most complex world. Like it's relatively contained, it's relatively small. There's really, I mean, I think there's 5 races that matter, and even within those races, like there's only 5 or 6 max different types of men. Like it's not like some huge world. I feel like even something like with Game of Thrones, like with Westeros, like knowing all the different kingdoms and all that, like those people all have such distinct like cultures and histories and all that. Like this is much simpler, and I think it's nice because it's not that difficult for people to step into and like understand what's happening. Have you ever read the Aragon books, Joel?
I've read the first one, but I was so young I don't really remember it, and I've watched the pretty terrible movie.
Yeah, it was bad. I feel like the way like that's a world where like there's just such a ridiculous amount. I feel like some writers will just put in so much detail and stuff. It's just like I love those books. I've read all 4 of them, but it's hard to get through, and we just sometimes you don't like less is more, I think. And I think this is just like the perfect amount of characters, a perfect amount of time spent with these characters to like actually get to know them and care about them. I feel like so many movies today, like if this was made today, I just feel like they would do it wrong, or like they wouldn't like spend enough time with the characters. They would rush it. Like I think it's a good balance of just time with everyone and like just getting you close enough to each of them that you're invested in each of their individual arcs.
If this was made today, I feel like we'd get like the 2 hour like everything jammed in movie, because like the comments I'll see on like some Lord of the Rings video, like I don't know, it was a pretty viral one a couple months ago where it was like someone was like, oh, I want to watch this movie, anybody know where I can watch it? And they're like, oh, it's on whatever, go watch. And they're like, oh, is there any newer version of it? Because it's like, oh, this is already 20 years old. And like is there a newer remake of it? And like that's a genuine. When we see these remakes, we're always like, who on earth is asking for this? But there are actually people out there that are like, oh, this is a 20-year-old movie.
Yes.
Where's my remake and new version of it that's shorter and everything framed in the center so I can make my perfect TikTok edit? And
I don't want to terrify you guys, but I mean, we're literally seeing it right now with Harry Potter, and it's the exact same studio. They're remaking Harry Potter. It's 20 years old. It's Warner Brothers. They could do the same thing with Lord of the Rings. I don't think that's very far off with how War of the Rohirrim is performing. I'm scared what they're going to do with what is it, the Ring for Gollum or the Gollum Ring?
Hunt for Gollum.
The Hunt for Gollum. Yeah,
I'm very worried about those. Like, not even just like it's taking like a sentence and like here's something from an appendix, and we're gonna make. Are they doing multiple? I think they're doing like at least 2. I think, right?
I saw 2.
Now,
I saw 2.
Trying to bring back all these cast members, like poor Ian McKellen at like 110 is going to be in. Him and Hugh Jackman are just like, you are going to be playing these characters forever. You're not leaving. I'm like, you're not going to match these movies ever. It's kind of a losing battle. I don't understand why it's a bad thing to just like infinitely print money off of the Harry Potter movies and the Lord of the Rings ones that exist. Like, I don't get why. Just release special editions and do stuff like that. Like, you do not need to just remake the same exact story. I hope they don't do that.
Yeah, the Harry Potter thing's interesting because I just don't feel like I care much either way. Like, I'm just like, I don't need this. I'm not super excited. I'm not like mad. I'm just kind of like indifferent. It's just like I have seen this before. It could be. It's only going to be interesting if you like go into the books and really tackle it from a different angle, or just try to tell stories that weren't touched on in the movies. Like if you're really in the books and you're finding stuff that we haven't seen before, that's can be cool. But otherwise, it's just going to be like, man, like I'll watch it, but I don't really have excitement. I don't know, but
well,
yeah,
it takes until book 4 until you're going to get stuff that was really changed in Harry Potter. Like the first 3 movies, yeah, they leave some stuff out because they're things, but they're adapting books that are like 300 pages and they capture 99% of the things people care about. Like I do think in books 4, 5, 6, there's tons of things left out that would be interesting to see, but do I want to watch the same story of the Philosopher's Stone dragged out over 8 hours for some reason? Probably not. Like it's just going to be that, and Chamber of Secrets are going to be like the same exact story, but probably worse because they're going to make it 8 to 10 hours of a series.
So I wanted to ask you guys, you're talking about the Hunt for Gollum. This is your Lord of the Rings knowledge here, because Dan was talking about the races. What is Gollum? What race is he? Because I have a follow-up question.
They
I'm not
were
versed enough.
they were either hobbits or like some people that are like hobbit adjacent. But I'm fairly sure he was a hobbit.
Okay, this is what I don't understand. Okay, I think this is pretty important lore that you might know.
He's like a different type of hobbit that isn't like.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, you're good. No, you're good. So basically, the ring helps people with longevity, right? That's why Bilbo is automatic or all of a sudden deteriorating. Right, helps. Well, it makes you old. It makes you older, right? So my question is, why isn't Gollum or Smeagol dying? Why doesn't? Because he's like 500, 600 years old, and I'm assuming he's that old because he had the ring that long. But then the ring no longer becomes in his possession, just like Bilbo Baggins, and Bilbo Baggins was withering away throughout this series. Why doesn't that happen to Smeagol?
Bilbo isn't really withering away. The ring.
He looks pretty bad. only a year has passed.
No. Bilbo's life is ridiculously extended for a hobbit. Like the ring gives you longevity even after you have it. And I think for Smeagol, like he had it for so long, he lost like any kind of humanity that he had, and his life was extended like tenfold. But because he had the ring for so long, he becomes something else, and then has to kind of live with that. But Bilbo lives like a ridiculously long lifespan for a hobbit and ends up going to live with the elves. But that's it doesn't like once you have the ring for a long period of time, that's like a change that just continues to happen. Like it's not
Right.
like as soon as the ring goes, you just die.
I'm gonna say because you said Bilbo lives a ridiculous long life for a hobbit. He's like 115, 116, I think. Like Smeagol's 600. That's what I'm like. I guess he's no longer a hobbit.
He
Like
had the ring. He had the ring for so long.
You just think the effect? Okay, the effects are just lasting on him a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even so, he was probably without the ring. I mean, what's the gap between the Hobbit um and the Lord of the Rings? The first, I mean, he's probably without the ring for 20, 30 years, 40 years. I don't know, but just something interesting.
I think, like you were
noticed.
saying too, he also like was to the point where he's so far from like being human at this point, where it's like, I think if you reach that point, you kind of just, I don't know, maybe you just, like you said, the effect lasting and you being far from humanity, you're just kind of now destined to be this. Because I don't know if you know, like how long, if you were Gollum, could I just live for ever pretty much in this state of be like, could I just be around for like 10,000 years?
Also, I will say everything with everything with Bilbo's aging and stuff like is it's odd in the movies. It's not so much in the book. Like he's much like healthier and stuff seeming in the book. It's I don't think they did a good job showing that in the movies.
Okay.
To be
I'll say
honest.
he definitely looks like he has one foot in the coffin, like when he's about
Yeah.
to leave with the elves. Can
Yeah,
I
it's not-
see my ring one more time
It's definitely
before I
not
die?
not really like that. But they just wanted to, I guess, show his age catching up with him, but it wasn't that like smoothly done.
Okay, so with us kind of discussing Fellowship of the Ring, I also wanted to present you guys with this question because I feel like you get to see basically everyone here. I gotta say, who is your favorite character?
I might go like, I don't know. It's hard. I think of the entire thing, I'd have to say Gandalf, but I'm also kind of a sucker for Samwise. Like, I feel like he might be. I don't know. Aragorn's too good though. That's kind of a hard. That's the thing. There's too many good things. I feel like you can't just pick one. Gotta have like, oh, in each faction, here's my pick.
Would you have liked Sam if it was James Corden?
That would be the worst thing
That was not a what if. That's no way.
that's
Yes, it
ever
was.
happened.
James Corden was the other choice.
He was
That
popular.
would-
He was like famous in 2001.
I don't know if he was famous.
He might have been
Sean
doing
Astin wasn't
acting.
that famous, but a lot of these people actually weren't that famous, which is one of the reasons it kind of worked.
Yeah,
But yeah, he was the other choice.
I guess I just love the Goonies, and Sean Astin's like the main actor in that, so that's like just what I know it from, which is like probably maybe one of the only movies he was in before Lord of the Rings. But
Yeah, I think Rudy was 93.
oh, Rudy, yeah.
That was kind of his big thing, and he was in Toy Soldiers too. But yeah, this really made a lot of careers, and I'm glad it did. The one casting I always talk about, I don't think Orlando Bloom was right here, and I don't even think it's necessarily so much that he wasn't right. I think it's the way they decided to write Legolas is not it for me. I feel like it's the one character from the book they just kind of like they really dumbed him down and made him just kind of like a superhero who could kind of just like do anything they needed him to do in the plot. But that's just not really what he's like in the books. And I know he was young, and I know it was, this is kind of how he started to break out. I wish they had gone a little bit of a different direction with him.
I feel like Legolas and Gimli are kind of like characters that get a lot left in the books. Like those two definitely are the ones I feel like that had way more, and they're kind of not really even characters to a certain extent. Like they have very small screen time compared to everyone else. They don't get a lot of like anything, either played off, like you said, either being a superhero or just kind of played off for like, oh, here's a funny moment.
Yep.
I don't mind Orlando Bloom in this, but I agree, definitely the character himself could have definitely been better.
Yeah, I think that's really it. Like, I don't think it's a bad performance. I just think it's like the way he's written, he's doing his best. And Gimli, I mean, is just comic relief. Like,
Yeah.
Which is a shame because like he's like we do see more from the elves, like with Elrond and with Arwen and Galadriel, and even at Helm's Deep and stuff. But dwarves, like, this is kind of like how they're represented in the story. He's kind of their representative, and I just wish we got a little bit more. It is nice. I mean, you do see kind of the development of him and Legolas's relationship, which was important because that was Tolkien kind of like looking at racism just straight up. Like, when he was writing that, like, they have a deep kind of hatred of each other's races that goes back, and you kind of see some of it in Rings of Power as to why, but it goes back a long time, and I think it is nice to see their friendship kind of develop. And there are some good moments, like in the Two Towers, when Éomer kind of pulls up on them with all the riders, and threatens Gimli, and Legolas like basically threatens to kill him. Like that moment, and you kind of see them grow. But yeah, they both just needed more time and development, I think, as characters, personally.
So is there anybody you would have cast instead of Orlando Bloom, or you're just more upset with the writing rather than Orlando Bloom's portrayal?
When I think about it and talk about it, it's he's not doing a bad job. It's just like he's written like a moron, and it's a lot of just like standing and like pensively staring off into the distance, and like it's just not what the character really is supposed to be. But and then in the Hobbit movies, he just wasn't in the Hobbit. They just decided to put him in, which was terrible as well. But
oh, didn't they do like a CGI thing to make him look young too?
Probably.
I'm almost positive they did that to Orlando Bloom's face. Almost positive.
Yeah, because I mean, he was older and the character was younger, so
yep. Yikes!
I can't believe, not to harp on it, but that there are defenders of this. Like, I don't understand. They are the most bloated nothingness of just trying to do anything to make the Hobbit children's storybook into the Lord of the Rings epic, and it's just like, just don't do it.
Yeah, and I think what's funny is the most of, like, I'm going to say offense, not offensive, but like offensive thing about those movies is they basically take the Battle of the Five Armies and turn it into an entire movie. And Tolkien's entire point, Bilbo gets knocked out in the book when the battle starts, and they don't show the battle because, first of all, it's a kid story, and second of all, Tolkien was he hated war. Like, he was in World War I at the time. Like, he saw awful shit, and he didn't want to show that, and he didn't want to like glorify it. So he made it was very pointed that Bilbo gets knocked out and the audience doesn't see the battle, and then he wakes up and it's pretty much over. So I think making a whole movie out of that, like, literally defeats the point that Tolkien was trying to get at. That always bothered me, but it's, very cinematic. Obviously, it gives you the opportunity to have this ridiculous, battle, and it is cool, but it's just CGI bullshit, and like I said, just kind of defeats the point. But
Well, it's like David Lynch's Dune that ends with like, oh, and Muad'Dib brought peace and love to nations and hope to places that had darkness, and I'm like, I don't think that's exactly what Paul Atreides was all about, but you go ahead and make that your ending.
I had another lore question. Why are those orcs just chilling in the dirt?
What?
Like, they like
Where
don't
are
they
they
like
chilling in the dirt?
in Isengard, right? Don't they like dig up orcs that are like in sacks?
Yeah, they're like breeding them. Like, they're Urkai. So like their Urkai are a mix of like orcs and men. So basically, they're like bigger, stronger, faster, and the main thing is they can move during the day. Like orcs don't like the light, so their armies always have to move at night. So when you have the Urkai, basically they can go like they can move a lot faster, cover more ground, and they can just run during the day for nonstop, which you kind of see. But they're like bred. It's I mean, I don't think they wanted to get into like how that happens. It's like pretty fucked up, but that's just how they decided to like portray it in the movie.
I thought orcs were like a version of elves, like elves that are like. Is that another version of orcs?
So, and Tolkien has kind of like gone back and forth on this in a lot of different ways as to what they were, but the main thought is a long, long, long time ago, the average orc were elves that were like corrupted and twisted into something else by Sauron. But yeah, the Urkai are like a different race that are like bred between orcs and men.
Okay, sorry. Well, a lot of lore, like these are things that never popped out to me before. But I was like, why are those guys just chilling in the dirt and like just like getting birthed? But now I know.
Like that all that stuff looks so good too. Like
Yeah,
this looks so much better than so much of what we see today. It really blows me away when I go back and watch these.
I had a question. Just I'll keep us circling back to the few times we actually talked about the actual Fellowship of the Ring. But I was wondering on the Gandalf, his iconic "You shall not pass" and quote unquote death. I mean, really the death, but not to get into all that. I was just wondering when you guys first watched that, did you know the moment was coming and like know he's coming back? Were you like, oh my god, they killed Gandalf in the first film? Like,
yeah, I mean, I had already read the books,
so you knew it was.
Yeah.
But when you read the books, were you like, oh, Gandalf's dead, or did you
know
there
I
was
mean,
something?
I was so young. I was like, damn, they killed Gandalf. But I kind of wish I didn't know because I feel like that would have been such a cool moment. And that introduction in the Two Towers, I don't know if I think what they did there is that's Christopher Lee's voice mixed in with McKellen, right?
That sounds right.
Like the reveal of Gandalf as Gandalf the White. Like they start out with his voice. Like I think it's Christopher Lee's voice.
Trick the
I think so.
And be like,
which is so cool, but I just wish I kind of experienced that without that knowledge. I think that would be really interesting to see.
I'm really good at going into movies without spoilers, but unfortunately, I'm pretty positive that I knew that he was okay. That's a bummer, but I think I did know that.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things that like was kind of impossible if you didn't watch it like right away. Like if you watched it at any point after like a year after that came out, you're probably like you knew what was going to happen,
or even seen the posters. The posters.
Yeah, a few people that didn't. I hate it. It's my beef. His movie posters, trailers spoil everything, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think just touching again on the first movie, I feel like New Zealand just makes so much of these movies in general. Like the actual landscapes they were working in are just absolutely beautiful, and like so many of the locations they found just fit exactly what they were trying to show. But not only New Zealand, like the land, but like the people, like the country, literally like mobilized to make this happen. Like they had their army like moving shit around for them. Like the entire country was behind this. And I think he used his Weta Workshop, I think is the company that like created everything. And they did an amazing job, but like New Zealand itself really, and all the extras, all the other actors, we really owe a lot of these movies to the country in general.
Shout out New Zealand.
Yeah.
All our Kiwis.
I'm sure you got a big demographic over there.
Thousands of New Zealanders. But but it's cool because I mean, this, Jackson is a New Zealander, and we didn't talk about it, but like this was a big, like, they took a chance giving him this job. Like, he was like a small, like, horror director. Like, he was nobody. Um, and I just think like the way he fought for this, and Fran Walsh, um, was incredible, and like fought to portray it in a way that was, that did it justice. Because it easily could have just been warped and turned into something else that was not so good.
Who do you guys think, like, worst case scenario, they would pick if they remade this trilogy as the director now? Because I was trying to think of, like, what would just be, like, the most brain-dead decision they can make to just be like...
Tarantino.
That would be it. They would never do that, but that would be the worst thing ever. Talk about missing the point. It would be like the most bloody and violent Lord of the Rings thing ever.
Dan, I haven't asked you this yet. A little bit tangent here, but my first thought was Greta Gerwig. But then, Dan, I haven't asked you what did you think about her the rock and roll quote that Amy Pascal said? Did you see that?
Yeah. So that I was gonna talk about that in a video because the day before that came out, the news was it's done. It's not happening. She's backing out. Like, the project is dead. And then the next day it was like, no, we're moving forward. This is when we're starting filming. So I don't know if that was like a bluff, like a last ditch effort to try to get it in theaters, because apparently like a lot of the IMAX theaters are telling them like, no, it's a pain in the ass. But I don't know. I'm interested still. I think Narnia is a lot of people can just be objectively against it. I mean, I feel like they're saying, like, I don't know what that actually means.
Yeah,
like, that could mean a million different things. I mean, we'll see. But
I feel like it's funny because like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were like good friends in college and stuff, and I mean, obviously, I think, and 99% of people, like, they're different stories completely, but Tolkien, I think 99 out of 100 people would pick as the better writer. But it is just funny. I feel like Narnia is something that is there's obviously a lot to those books, but they're way simpler kids stories. That's something that really has to be elevated, I feel like, and turned into something if you're going to redo it like over the original ones, because the original Narnia movies obviously like pick and choose which books they're going to do and not. But I feel like that's kind of more of a challenge, and like there was a way more from Lord of the Rings to pull to make this amazing trilogy, whereas Narnia, I feel like Greta Gerwig is going to have to pull some magic to make it something that works in like today's age.
yeah, I mean, I've kind of talked about this before, but Narnia is weird because it's kind of not, like, it's not consistent. Like, the stories, like, you're literally going back and forth between different characters, different tones, like all the time jumps, all the character jumps. Some of the stories are like really kind of fucked up and dark, and then some of it like is just way lighter. So I think if you're trying to tell the entire story, it becomes really difficult to make it all consistent and make it all work together. Which I think, like we talked about, is one of the things that works so well with Lord of the Rings. Like, it all feels very cohesive. But Narnia is just all over the place. And the other thing that like people complain about, I think, is it's really hard to do Narnia without like, it's a Christian story. Like, it's just a straight up Catholic book, or not. He wasn't Catholic, but it's a straight up Christian book. And some people, I think, don't want to see that, and other people do. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think regardless of your faith, like, there are stories that are deeply tied to Islam or Judaism, or every story should be told. Like, I just think that's not a reason to just be like, oh, well, I don't want to see Christian. Like, I don't like Christian fundamentalism either, but you can't just ignore the story because a Christian wrote it and there's Christian allegories. I think it's a little bit silly.
I feel like my only problem with that is like, I don't mind those stories being told, but I feel like at some point Lewis was literally just like, I'm taking something from the Bible and I'm putting a lie in here. Like, this is how
Well,
I'm doing
Joe-
it. Because, like,
Yeah, I mean,
just, there's
it
some
gets a little-
moments that are, like, a little... it's not even, like, the story. It's like, I'm taking this and putting a character here, I feel like.
I told Dan, I think I told Dan this, but I recently just randomly, probably 4 or 5 months ago, watched the 3 Narnia movies back to back. I'd never seen the Dawn Trader, whatever it's called. Um, and I watched them. I think my wife watched a lot of them with me. I was like, these movies kind of suck at the end. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, Aslan always just shows up and just saves the day. And my wife's like, well, Stone, that's supposed to be God. I was like, well, okay, I get that, but it doesn't really make for a really fun story. It's just like, Aslan will save us. Here he comes.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting conversation there because C.S. Lewis, and I to play devil's advocate, C.S. Lewis talked about writing stories to like kind of indoctrinate kids into Christianity. Like that was kind of his point. So like, sure, I get it. And I think it's interesting with Tolkien. I mean, he was a Catholic and took it very seriously, but I think he was able to put his beliefs into his story in subtler ways and in ways that didn't feel so preachy. Although, like, he very obviously is like fairly conservative and like fairly nostalgic for like the good old days, and that's kind of how he viewed the world. And like I talked about, he sees everything as very black and white. Doesn't really like nuance with his characters. But I think it still works and people still like it. But I think Narnia is just a lot more heavy-handed, so it's difficult. It's a challenge for sure.
Well, Tolkien, I feel like I've read like both of them have like their own stories where they talk about like how they formulate stuff, and Tolkien was a lot more about like he wanted his stories to make people feel ways that he felt about religion, but without like preaching it or making people, like you said, Lewis wants to kind of indoctrinate people into it, and that was kind of his goal. Tolkien was more for like, well, this is the feeling of hope at these movies give you that kind of feeling of hopefulness and, all the themes of redemption and stuff. That's what he was more going for. Lewis was more like, I'm going to give you kind of the formulation of like how to get into the stories. And this is the story that I want you to get into, which I feel like is why a lot of people probably don't even realize that, like, if you don't know anything about Tolkien and you just watch Lord of the Rings, you could watch and be like, oh, there's nothing religious about these at all, but it's definitely in there.
Yeah. I think especially the Two Towers and Return of the King as movies are pretty dark. I almost feel like at times they made them darker than was intended or darker than the books were, and I feel like they lean into that a little bit more in the movies than they do Tolkien did in the books. And I think I like Fellowship of the Ring because I think it's the best balance of everything Tolkien was trying to do, and I think there is a cheerfulness and a hopefulness and like a joy to it, but it also has the more serious aspects. But the tone of the last two is like way darker.
I'll say this might kind of lead into the Two Towers a little bit, just because I brought it up earlier. Asked Joel who your favorite character was. You named like 5, but Dan, I don't think you ever said it, but I was gonna say my favorite character, and it's funny that we're talking about religion and all this stuff because I'm thinking about Dan's video that you made today, thinking about like how kind of Gandalf is like a god and Frodo has begotten the sins of man and must, sacrifice himself, this burden on him, all this stuff. I think there's one character in this movie, only one character that I tried paying attention to it that is never tempted by the ring. I don't think.
Tom Bombadil.
Oh yeah, is that the one guy?
That's like his thing. He doesn't give a single shit about the ring. But
here's the thing, I might be biased because this is my favorite character. I don't think I ever saw Sam get tempted by the ring. I don't think. I think there's one moment I was paying attention to it. I think there's one moment where he is like, I think he's looking at Frodo rather than the ring itself, and he's trying to like figure out him and like what he's feeling towards the ring. But I don't think that I think it's in Return of the King, but I don't think he's ever tempted, which is really interesting because he's always with it. Not a single time is he tempted, right? And then, Sam's my favorite character. And I also found it really interesting. Obviously, we're not talking about the last movie, but we're kind of combining everything. That they end the movies on Sam as I don't know. It's just the fact that he has those two characteristics about him. I just find that pretty powerful with him being my favorite character. I think that's pretty fucking cool. I don't know really what you think that means in your whole like your thesis that you gave today, Dan. Like what is Sam supposed to represent in Tolkien's religious fantasy world that he's created? Because he's a very interesting character. The fact that he is just not the one to, take on the burden, just the one to help.
Well, Sam is probably the most important character in the story at the end of the day, I think. Because like without Sam, it just nothing really works. And Sam is always kind of there to push Frodo in the right direction and kind of have his best interests in mind, even when Frodo is kind of losing his mind and not able to handle like the burden of the ring. And when Sam, when he's able to take the ring, like he still just keeps going and is so like just focused. I think he's incredibly important, and I don't think any of this really happens without him.
Yeah, he literally has the ring, and he's just like, "Here, I took it. You can have it back." He's like not tempted at all.
Yeah, it's. I guess to set up how I feel about this, are there any moments in these movies or any sequences or just time with characters that you guys don't enjoy as much, or like sequences of the story that it goes to that you maybe are like kind of waiting to end?
I have one for sure. It's more of a problem in the books. It's kind of a problem in the movies with Two Towers. Is everything with Treebeard and the Ents.
Oh no.
Ents.
In the books especially, it is like a 2.5 hour long chapter, and I can't stand it by the end of it. It's not as much in the movies, obviously. Like I think he's fine in the films, but there's not really a moment in the movies where I'm like, oh, I would delete this from the thing. But that I remember reading the books. I'm like, there's just more and more pages of just Treebeard, and I don't want to hear this tree talking anymore. I'm done with it.
How is Andy Serkis's Treebeard's voice?
His Treebeard was very good, but I was still sick of it. I was like, no, Andy Serkis, like I said, I would definitely recommend, like, if you haven't read any of these, I would honestly just do The Hobbit, though. Like, that's either an audiobook or read it. It's a very quick read, and that's a good way to get into the world. And you'll be like, oh, this is actually a good story compared to the 3 terrible movies I watched.
See, I love Treebeard. I love the Ents. I also think part of that is I really like Merry and Pippin, and I think Pippin might have.
Their arc is so cool to me. I'm sorry, just the two of them. You just like at the beginning with the Fellowship of the Ring, you do not expect what happens to them to happen. Like, and their story is so different, more than maybe anybody else. Like all 3 movies. Like they're just tag-alongs in the first one, they're together in the second one, and they're completely separated in the third one. It's so good.
Yeah, I think Pippin might have the. I want to say I think he might have the best arc in the story. Like when you really look at his character, because at the start he's just such a moron. Like he literally is, kind of a ball and chain that just weighs them down. He, is the reason they get attacked in Moria, which is eventually what leads to the death of Gandalf. And he just is such a kind of a fuck up. And I think this story puts its characters through so much. And I think he is one that goes through a lot, and just comes out better for it and really changed. I like Pippin a lot, but yeah, Treebeard, I think he's cool. And I like that Isengard really becomes just Tolkien's able to like talk about kind of industrialization and like the war machine that he saw and like what happened to um, Europe in World War One. Like a lot of that is in Isengard and Mordor, and um, I just think the conflict was kind of set up there between like nature and Saruman and the orcs, and like Treebeard as kind of a representation of that, and nature just like fighting back. Like I think they're cool, and they're a little bit like Deus Ex Machina. Like they can just like fuck up anything, and just you can't really stop them. But I like it, and I like, you know, um, when they end up at the tower and they're just all around it. It's all like water and just the Ents are there. I think that's cool.
I like all that stuff you said, but I'm still at a certain point. I'm just like, can this tree stop talking? Like, it's cool. All the stuff behind it, like you said, the nature, and I love that. But it reaches a point of no return for me where I'm just, my TikTok attention span gets the best of me.
That's fair.
Honestly, one thing that I found a little annoying on this rewatch, and this a little bit disappointing, was that I felt that the situations that both Rohan and Gondor were in were very similar. And I thought, in my opinion, that was just a little bit lazy. As in the fact that both of them have rulers that at the time when they are introduced don't give a shit. As in, obviously, one is under a spell from Wormwood, right?
Wormtongue. It really under Saruman, but
Right, through him. But when I watched the Two Towers and then I got to the Return of the King, I was like, oh, it's kind of just the same. It's another corrupt ruler who is just not going to help them out, so they got to do it themselves. I don't know. I wish it was something different. It just felt a little bit of the same.
I think there's enough there because, I mean, Theoden like is actually a good king, and I think like Rohan and Gondor, like Tolkien really went out of his way to kind of differentiate them. Like when he was thinking about Gondor, he was thinking about like the Byzantine Empire and like Eastern Roman Empire, and just like they're very like well put together. They have an impressive army. They're a little bit more like highbrow, and Rohan is like when he was when Tolkien was thinking about Rohan and putting them together and creating Edoras, he was thinking about Beowulf. Like Tolkien spent a long time. He did like his own translation of Beowulf. He loved it. So when he decided to create like these like horse people, he was referencing like all of those kind of like Viking and like also Anglo-Saxon groups. But he didn't want to just portray them in a way that was like stereotypical and like, you know, he didn't want to make them morons. Like they are intelligent. They do have like really nice architecture and stuff like that, but they're a little more like down to earth, but also they're kind of the underdog, like in comparison to Gondor, and there's kind of a resentment there. So I feel like he made the people themselves very different, and I think Theoden, to get back to what I was saying, is a really good king that you see is just kind of corrupted. Denethor, like he can't process what's happening. He can't process like the death around him, and he's grieving. And I feel like you just see someone like he has a very different frame of mind, and he like has actually lost his mind to the point that he can't lead. And I think it's such a good performance. Like he really stands out to me. I feel like there's enough difference there. But Joel, how do you feel?
I kind of agree with you. I think also it kind of like, I don't think it being kind of repetitive is a problem to me. Like if there are similarities, I feel like that's something intentionally that Tolkien was trying to be like, say something about rulers in general, even though one is like possessed. I feel like it's, I don't know, it doesn't bother me. I feel like there is enough of a difference where it doesn't bother me. And just before I forget, because you mentioned the translation he did, I was gonna say in general, the languages and Tolkien being like a language expert, I also think is what makes this world feel so alive. Like the fact that Elvish is like a real thing he created that you can actually like learn and stuff. I feel like that's just something that you're not seeing in any new fantasy things. Like only George R. R. Martin, I think, got somewhat close to creating a world with Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire that as deep, or you can dig as deep into the lore of, with just so many details from like real life history, real languages all coming together into a fictional thing. I feel like a lot of new fantasy authors, movies, the people making them don't really know a lot of the history of all these different cultures and languages and stuff to make a new world feel compelling. I feel like that's what Tolkien had. Like, he knew countless languages, fluent in so many of them, and I feel like those little details of like being able to make your own language is what makes it so immersive.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's also Stone, like, Rohan is more kind of at conflict with Isengard and kind of dealing with Saruman, and you kind of see that directly with what's happening at Theoden. And Gondor is really kind of like the buffer against Mordor and always like kind of under direct threat there, which is a lot of pressure for them. But I don't know. I just feel like Denethor is a really good representation of like grief and how it can just completely destroy you. And also they don't really get into it in the movies, but he's using a Palantir, like that ball orb thing that he can look into, which is also driving him insane. But I don't think
I don't think they show that at all.
no, that just was kind of left out, and they kind of just lean more into the grief.
Which I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, but and I think it's interesting. I mean, seeing the way he treats Faramir and like completely disregards his life, like I think all that's really strong. Um, yeah, and also we didn't talk about it, but Carl Urban, yeah, I think is really good as Aemir too. I think he's a great character and really fits that role nicely.
How do you guys like about the love triangle?
I'm an Eowyn person personally. I'm not sure what he's doing, but I think Eowyn's like one of the best characters in the books.
Okay, that's up. That's up. So you're down for it.
You
So would
disagree?
you have you would have chosen Eowyn instead of?
Oh, for sure.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Arwen's just like, I don't know.
Wait. Okay. Another
I don't
thing.
love Liv Tyler in this. Like,
She has a power that gives her life.
they're
And the
important.
well, the stronger that Sauron gets, she's dying. Only her.
No, well,
That's what Daddy Elf said.
yeah. I mean, the elves are leaving. Basically, the elves are leaving because they just kind of assume the world is like completely cooked.
Assholes. Sorry.
Yeah,
Peace
I mean,
out.
they are. But yeah, I mean, I think romance is kind of like not really that important in this story. I guess it's kind of how it ends up, but the romantic stuff with Arwen and Aragorn I don't really love.
No, Eowyn.
Yeah, Eowyn's just like she's just like with the shit. Like she's with them all the time. She's like fighting. Like she's just. I just feel like she fits better with Aragorn. Like I feel like they're very similar people. I don't know.
So do you remember what I'm talking about? Like the Daddy Elf literally says that Eowyn or Arwen, why are their names so similar? Has like this power of herself, but because she's staying, that power is going away the stronger that Sauron gets. So Aragorn literally has to defeat Sauron or she will die.
Well, so the elves have their own rings, which is tied to the ring itself. So I think if the ring
It's only her. It's only her. That's what he's saying. That's Hugo Weaving.
No, it's all of them. That's part of the reason that they're leaving. But I think I'm trying to think. I don't know if I think she basically if she chooses to stay in Middle Earth, she's like, and they all leave, she's going to be like cut off from whatever it is that's extending their life, which is tied to like their rings. So it's
Okay.
it's kind of a little bit of bullshit, just to show like sacrifice for like the love or whatever. But it also just kind of shows like what's happening to Middle Earth and that being reflected with the elves.
Well, this is kind of completely off topic, but it will be like a bookend in Two Towers. I have to say Sam's speech at the end, I think, is one of my favorite scenes in the entire trilogy. Like, that hits me like a truck every time.
Josh, I think Sean Astin is the best actor in this series. I think he's given them
That's a
the
little crazy. Like, I said he might be my favorite character, but
nope.
Over Ian McKellen, like...
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm a sucker. I mean, he has the most monologues / emotional scenes, I think, out of any character. He's literally like, Frodo, please, just stop fucking with Gollum, please. Like, he does that like 5 times. And every time he does that, I'm like, damn it, Sean Astin. You're making me tear up. Stop it. He's like pouring out of his eyes. So I'm just like, I'm a sucker for
another one that Two Towers ends with his monologue. Like, it's another Samwise might be the Jesus Christ all along of this franchise that we didn't know.
I'm good with
make a new fan theory.
Also, it's weird I hate my 2024 brain, but at the end of this movie, I know we're not talking about it, but we're talking about Sam. It's like him being like, Sam, the rest is for your adventure. The rest of this book. I was like, oh, Sam spinoff, let's go.
That is really just franchise pilled beyond belief. Like,
I know.
Where's my 8-episode Samwise miniseries? Let's go. Can't wait.
Oh gosh.
They are gonna do something like that. Like, if these next movies don't do well, the Hunt for Gollum, which I don't think they are, like, I don't know. People love these movies. Who's going to go and see The Hunt for Gollum in the theaters? Clearly, not a lot of people are just going to go see anything just if it has Lord of the Rings. I mean, if they bring the actors back, it will have some pull, but I don't think it's not going to end well.
Also, I mean, to touch on kind of the end of Two Towers, I think Helm's Deep is probably the most people's favorite battle ever in a film, and I mean, it makes up the last, like, I don't know, 45 minutes of the movie or so. It really is incredible, and I feel like there's a lot of reasons for that, but I feel like the setup is really, really well done and paced out nicely. It being set at night is wonderful with the rain.
It's lit well.
Yeah, not
Game
like
of Thrones season 8 episode 3. Oh,
the best part of Helm's Deep is that I now know why it's named Helm's Deep, guys. Thank God.
Yeah, there you go.
Couldn't sleep at night unless I knew that origin.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think
they keep you very entertained. It's like a 40-45 minute fight, and there's just constant different obstacles thrown at you. I know one thing that stands out to me, I know this is crazy that this is the one thing, and I know they hate that Legolas is a superhero. I like the shield slide. I think that's fucking dope. Just surfing in this battle. I'm like, let's go. I like it.
There's just the CGI in these movies are generally good. There's a couple moments with him that just look wonky, like also
the elephant.
Also in the Two Towers, he's in front of a horse that I think Gimli is riding, and then he like grabs its neck and like loops himself up, and it's just like,
that's so
why
bad.
did you do that? Like, just it looks bad. But yeah, Helm's Deep is awesome. I love the moment too. We were just talking about the elves. There's like, it's all set up so well. Like, there's a lot of good conversation between Aragorn and Theoden. Where Theoden, like I said, Rohan's kind of this like underdog. They don't feel like anyone has their back. They feel like they have to look out for themselves. And you feel like he's just lost hope in Middle Earth and lost hope in anyone else helping them. And when Haldir and all the elves pull up, that scene is so cool. I love that. And it's just like, it's a nice moment of him realizing like people still care, and not everyone is just gonna run away. I like that a lot.
I like the. I mean, I know he's just a comic relief, but I mean the running gag of Gimli and Legolas counting their enemies, I think, is really funny. Especially, I mean, we're not talking about it, but like when he kills the Oliphant and he's like, "I still won," it gets me. But when Gimli when Gimli looks at Aragorn, he's like, "Throw me." Aragorn's like, "For real?" It was he's like, "Don't tell the elf." That's pretty good.
And it's like I do wish we got the comic relief does work. I just wish we did get more beyond just that. But the stuff is funny most of the time. Like it does work. I just wish they went a little bit more into making Gimli and Legolas like people. But I understand. Then I'm complaining about the extended cuts too, and if it's longer, then maybe the movies aren't as good. I guess you got to make some sacrifices. So I guess I'm fine with them. If those have to be the two that are left in the chopping block, it's probably fine. But I would like a little bit more Gimli. I feel like a little bit more of like anything about him.
Yeah, I mean, his real like the only moment that he really gets is in Moria when he's kind of understanding what has happened, and you know, you kind of see him like grieving and dealing with that. But outside of that, it's bad. Legolas, he kind of crashes out in the Two Towers on Aragorn, and is just like, yeah, we're all gonna fucking die when they're having that back and forth in Elvish, like, which is cool in the with all the men like in at Helm's Deep, and then he kind of apologizes afterwards. I think that's interesting to see him kind of like feel something and show emotion. I think that's nice. But then he kind of like instantly apologizes. But I think that's still a good moment. But the battle itself, you kind of said, Stone. It's doing a battle right is all about pacing, right? Like I think like it's about understanding push and pull and how to show like, you know, small wins and then incremental losses and leading up to bigger moments. And I think when you do that right, it leads to Gandalf eventually showing up just hitting so hard because you feel like they're just absolutely screwed. But it's hard to like pace that out. I think a lot of people struggle with that, like these days.
Well, like the Battle of the Five Armies, it's just like 3-hour battle. It's like I literally see people defending. They're like, "Dude, it's a 3-hour fight scene. How can you not love it?" I'm like, I don't. Fight scenes are some of my least favorite scenes in any movie. I'm just like, okay, after a certain point, you've seen everything so many times, and that movie's like, we're just gonna do a battle for 3 hours, and you're gonna like it, and it's not good compared to, like you said, Helm's Deep or anything in Return of the King. That's just like so masterful. Like every way, everything gets introduced, like you said, one by one. It knows how to like break it up and actually tell a story.
Yeah, and I think what you're kind of getting at, and the reason stuff like Five Armies is so bad, what Five Armies tries to do is it just wants to show you like really big scale and like spectacle, and just like it's just like all these this CGI bullshit just mashing together and just a lot of carnage. But to make a good huge battle, you need to have like personal moments. Like you have to be invested in individual fights. I also think it helps to feel like characters can die, because I think a lot of times with like superhero movies and stuff, it's like these huge fights of just CGI throwaway enemies. There's no danger. It's just nothing's personal. They're just like plowing through people, and if there's no struggle and no danger, you're not going to emotionally invest in what
That's
you're
what
watching.
I'm really worried about with the new Superman movie. As I'm like, you need to make Superman small and personal. You cannot do the Zack Snyder, I'm blowing up 75,000 buildings and there's no people or no anything and it's all gray and there's 37 nukes going off. Like you need to make the character that's almost invincible. You need to make him like personal. And I don't know. I have faith in James Gunn, but I don't think that universe is going to succeed anyways. It's just such weird choices, but that's a whole different combo to get into.
When you say small personal, I think like something completely different that he's done is cast like 30 people for this first movie, and I'm like, why?
Well, he keeps reiterating that like it's Superman, Lois, and Lex is the focus, but the cast is so big. I'm worried about it. Like, there's so many characters that nobody outside of huge comic fans have heard of. That just those are kind of things that are just like just for you to wink in the audience. It's just like or nudge your friend, be like, oh, there's Squirrel Man 75. Like, I don't know why. So many characters in this new DCU.
Yeah, he is making a lot of
30-second like keeping Peacemaker. It's bad. It's bad
like
stuff. But
I'm excited, but the Clayface thing is weird. I don't know why you would do a Clayface movie before a Batman movie in your universe, but whatever.
I kept seeing people make comparisons. They're like, what if Marvel started with like it started with a Guardians of the Galaxy TV show that was animated, Iron Man then next, and then you got like a Hela movie or something. Like, it would make no sense. Like, what are we doing? Like,
it's very, very interesting. I don't know, man. I think he's very much set on the fact that he wants those scripts to be done, which I applaud him for. But he also has a deadline of like, we got to get movies out. So whenever a script presents itself, when it is part of a DC, part of the DC brand, he's like, good to go. Like, he doesn't have Batman ready. It's not ready to go. The script's not ready to go. But Mike Flanagan's been working on the Clayface script probably for 2 or 3 years. And it's like filming begins this year or next year or whatever they said. So he's just like, I needed a movie. Here it is.
Are Superman, Supergirl, and Clayface for movies.
It's wild.
It's so mind blowing, but go ahead.
I just had another quick thought about this. They made these 3 movies for less than $300 million in 14 months, and when you think about that, it's so absurd. And it made these just so ridiculously profitable, like $93 million, $94 million. And it looks so good, and you have these casts. Like, it's obviously inflation is a thing, but it just makes you wonder the types of money laundering and shit that's going on with budgets these days. Because, like, what are we doing? It's wild. I also wanted to say just quickly with the opening of the 2 Towers, I think it's one of the best opening scenes of any movie ever. Like, the fight of Gandalf and the Balrog, and seeing what actually happened, I think is just incredible. And I also think with Gandalf in this, Ian McKellen, he plays it so well. Like, this is a completely different, literally a different character. They have completely different traits. They view everything differently. And when Gandalf comes back, he is so ridiculously OP. Like, he's basically in the second and third movies, like, he can do whatever he wants. Like, he could deal with it all himself. He's like holding back his power. Like, he's literally not allowed to use the power that he actually has.
Honestly, that's something I noticed. He doesn't really use a lot of power. He's just he's like beating dudes with his stick.
He's literally not allowed. Like, when he gets sent back, he's essentially told, like, you have to basically just use as little power as you can to, like, get the job done. Like,
they never explained that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love how he's like ditching his old self too. He's like, oh yeah, I was called Gandalf at one point. Now I'm Gandalf the White. How about that?
And that's one of those things, like, it's so obviously just like an explanation to be like, oh, this is why Gandalf can't just super save the day, but you kind of need those things on stories. Like, again, Game of Thrones, very limited magic in a world that has it in there. If you have like a wizard that can just do everything in your story and you don't put a limit on it, and now we have like the new, like, the comic age where everybody just wants like, oh, power scaling and Gandalf's is powerful, why can't it just make him solve everything? It's like, okay, well, that's not a story. Like, you need to actually have a story. It doesn't matter how powerful the wizard is. Like,
that's interesting. I'm surprised they left that out, that little discrepancy. They're like, yeah, you can't really do that much, Gandalf. I'm surprised they didn't mention that at all. I don't think they did.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But that's also why he's just so like unbothered, and like, I mean, it's funny if you sat down and write down if you sat down and like wrote out what Gandalf does in the Two Towers and Return of the King, he is literally just riding like 800 miles back and forth on Shadowfax and just doing everything. Like he's like, I'm gonna go fix this and this and this and rally these people. He finds Aemir and brings them back to the battle. Then he goes to Gondor, like
Gondor,
to Minas Tirith, and like he just Gandalf the Grey is so like meandering, and he's like smoking weed and just like riding around. He has 60 years where he like knows the ring is a problem, doesn't do shit about it. Like he's very unsure. And once he's the White, he's just always confident and certain and just getting shit done. So it's a good performance from Ian. Very different.
Return of the King. Here we go. Dan, I think you look like the king. I think you look like Aragorn.
Yeah.
You've gotten that, haven't you?
No.
Oh, shit, my bad.
Gonna get cast in the new
There you
Max
go.
original remake.
Yeah. I guess quickly before we touch on this, do you guys differentiate these three movies in your head in terms of your enjoyment, or like how do you look at that, or are they all the same to you?
It's tough. I mean, they're all made at the same time. They really feel like a continuous story. Like they are. Like I can never just watch one. Like you can't just pop on the third one. You just can't pop in the second one. You really can't. So it's hard, honestly, to differentiate them for me, at least.
Yeah, I definitely like. I think every time I rewatch them, I almost like feel like I have a different favorite. Like the last time, I was like, I would never pick the Two Towers, but like there were just so many moments in there that hit me. Like I think that one almost stands alone. Like I don't know, because you have the beginning, end, but the middle piece, there's so much that like it is just allowed to just go the entire movie. It doesn't have to focus on wrapping everything up or setting everything up. I almost think Two Towers might be my favorite, but Return of the King's so good it's hard to like not pick that one. But like I said, I never not watch all three of them back to back. They definitely kind of blend together in my mind, but Two Towers for some reason kind of sticks out to me.
I've been thinking about it. I honestly think I might like Return of the King the least. Like I love them all, and I honestly think I just think they're all 5-star movies. Like at the end of the day, like I that shit doesn't matter. It's just enjoyment. I enjoy all of these the same amount, from the visuals to the storytelling to the performances. Like everything is wonderful, but Two Towers is so good. Um, and I love everything with Rohan. Like they spent 6 months building Edoras and like actually built a hall, and like the music for Rohan, like with that like violin, like inner, like it's all so good. I like spending time there. Um, the Two Towers might be my favorite, which I used to think was my least favorite, which is weird, but
Yeah, that's the same thing I had. Like the first watch through, I was like, oh, this is just the weak middle one. And every time I watch it again, it just grows on me. But I also think I've grown more like I prefer almost the meat of the story rather than like the big conclusion of like in these things. Like I love the Harry Potter books. I love just like getting to Hogwarts. They're just doing random stuff in classes and this stuff. Every time it gets to the big conclusion, I'm like, okay, I don't really care about the giant battle and oh, this person's dead and that. Like, I kind of just like being in the middle of the story, and that's what Two Towers is for an entire movie.
yeah, and I think maybe first time watch, it's like in your head, you're like, oh, but I want to see what happens in Return of the King. But then, like, once you have it all and you've seen that, then you can actually like judge them each effectively. And I think, yeah, Two Towers is great.
I like Return of the King the best. Wait, actually, no, I don't. I'll tell you why. I think I like Fellowship the best. I think there's one big flaw in Return of the King. What happens to Saruman?
He gets killed by Wormtongue.
Do you see that?
No, I think in the extended edition you do.
Yep. I think that's a big old flaw. That's a big old flaw that in the theatrical version, at the end of Two Towers, the Ents are just like, oh, there's a wizard up there. And then, oh, no, they do at the beginning of this movie. At the beginning of The Return of the King, I think Aragorn, rides in and Treebeard's there. And Merry and Pippin are like, yeah, or Treebeard's like, yeah, Saruman's out there just chilling. That's it. That's all I get. There's no payoff. And that whole thing with Wormtongue, that happens in the extended edition, but it doesn't happen in the theatrical.
Is it bad that I kind of don't care? Like, I feel like for the emotional highs that the movie reaches, I understand you want the Saruman thing to be like the piece of the puzzle, like what happened here, and it definitely probably should have been in there, but it's never actually bothered me before. Like, I don't know, I've never been like I needed the Saruman scene at this movie.
I'm going to tell you too, kind of why I like it, Stone.
Okay.
And it ties into Gandalf and what I was just talking about, because Gandalf basically pulls up, and this version of him is so confident and again so high powered. Now he's on the same level. He is not an underdog anymore. He literally is just like, yeah, he has no power anymore. Like, he's irrelevant. And Saruman is just, he was a tool for like Sauron to play with and use. But like, once he doesn't have his army and his power, and once Gandalf can actually take the power that he deserves, like, Saruman's just irrelevant, and he just is forgotten, which I think I almost like, because it's just like he doesn't matter anymore. I think that kind of almost works with the story, but
it's hard though because he's like the second big baddie. I mean, I hate to say. I mean, yeah, it's not. I guess it's not the traditional way to go, the way that they just left him out, but he is a pretty big character, and I mean, you do have obviously this trilogy is really concerned about like wrapping up every single character and making sure like where everyone is and everything like that. Well, to an extent. So I'm just surprised that they didn't do that, I guess.
Oh, I feel like Saruman is an important character, and like he's so big in his moments, but I feel like in the movies themselves, he's not actually like, I don't know, I feel like he's very sparingly used so much. That's kind of why he's barely in the movies actually. Like, when he's on screen, it's like, oh, this is such a big moment, but it's really not that often in the thing. I don't think he's as big as a character as you're saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking about Christopher Lee.
You're wrong about it in every way, shape, or form. You're not allowed to have opinions anymore. That's what the internet is. You're not allowed to not like this thing.
It is. I think it's one of those things too where it's such a good performance, and he's so compelling. Christopher Lee is so talented that, Stone, you might feel like he's on screen more than he actually even is. Christopher Lee also was, I think, the only cast member who met Tolkien. So he had, like, behind the scenes, he had a lot to do with this movie, with how things looked, he was very involved in it because he knew Tolkien. He had talked to him about it. And he had an understanding of like what should be what. So he had a huge impact on this, even if Saruman's really just kind of there to, like, you kind of see him like rallying up his orcs and getting ready to do things, but his biggest moment is most likely, I guess, the confrontation with Gandalf when he kind of kicks the shit out of him, and also the moment where he is pulling down the mountain when they're on the side of the mountain in the snow, which ends up driving them into Moria. But yeah, it's a good performance. But I kind of like that he's just forgotten, sort of, and he's just, as you see, Sauron just like uses everyone and doesn't really, they're not actually really that relevant.
Okay. If you guys say so. I'm just kidding. But I will say there is stuff in the extended. It's kind of weird because you can't add that. I mean, if you watch the extended edition, there's obviously things that shouldn't be there, but then you have stuff that possibly should have been there. Like, what would you have done? Would you have included his death? Because he falls from the tower, right?
He gets stabbed in the back and then falls.
by Wormtongue.
Yeah.
And nobody cared about because that's a redemption arc for Wormtongue, correct?
Not redemption. No, he's just still a rat. He's just
Okay. I got you.
Like I said, like the end of this movie, everything with like destroying the ring finally and stuff. I feel like, yeah, somewhere in there you could have thrown it in earlier, but I don't know. I feel like the movie wants to get to this its big end, and I don't really mind because that stuff is so good at the very end that I don't know.
I guess it would be. It would have been just like one scene too. It's like just having like one or two scenes of just Saruman and Wormtongue. It's like, do we really need that kind of a thing? They're not that important.
Yeah, I think my hot take, I guess, around all these movies is my least favorite thing about them is any time with Frodo and Sam. So
what is it?
Oh my gosh!
I know that's
you just
weird.
Sit here and
but-
listen to us both say like Sam's our favorite character. And you're like,
Look at
you
him.
know what?
No,
I
Sam is an awesome character, but I think the thing with Sam is like he's so perfect. I'm just kind of like, okay, like he's there just to be this sign of like hope and faith and the goodness of people, blah blah blah. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, who
It's
cares
like,
about goodness of people? Honestly, just like, throw it to the side.
No, it's cool. I just like in the 50th,
Give me some more Eowyn.
Yeah, exactly. 50th thing of that was like, all right, I get it. And I think like Elijah Wood is good in the movies, but like he's a little bit whiny and like annoying at times. I don't
The
think
Ring, my guy.
It's also just not a great performance at times, I think. I don't know. It's just kind of and like Gollum just I like Gollum's cool, but like in doses. And when it's just like
I kind of agree with that one.
scene after scene of Gollum, like okay, I'm looking at this CGI creature. He's just being goofy and he has schizophrenia and this and that. Like okay, I get it, but yeah, I'm just like let me get back to like Aragorn and Legolas and Theoden and Gandalf. Like it's just better storylines to me. But I know that's not a popular take, probably.
No. I'm sorry. I really like Sam. And I really like how
You don't have to
fucked
be
up.
sorry. It's okay.
Yeah. I'll say I really just like how, like, especially in this movie, they just look so miserable. They're just like,
Yeah.
we just want to die. Like, we got no food for the way home. This is kind of it. And also, I know they're hobbits, but it's still, like, it makes me flinch just a little bit that they're always just barefoot. I was like, y'all got freaking calluses on those feet.
They got bigger problems, I guess.
Yeah, they got some.
Slightly bigger problems happening in this movie than their footwear, I guess.
Yeah, but everything with a spider, I know you said its actual name. What's its actual name?
Shelob.
Shelob. That's great. There's this awesome shot where it looks like, I think it's a upward looking Dutch angle of like Frodo is like walking and the thing is above him. It is so it looks so good. Like the CGI looks great on Shelob. Sorry, trying to pronounce the spider's name right, but everything with that thing looks awesome. The thing looks so cool, and it works out for them very conveniently that the trap that Gollum is trying to set for them is in the path of Mordor. It's not like to the side; it's like straight there. So that also works out.
Are you not a fan of the pretty much same exact scene that they do in Chamber of Secrets? That definitely wasn't copied from Lord of the Rings or anything, where they run into Aragorn or not Aragog the spider, not Aragorn. That is the thing. Like it is crazy. Just like I love Harry Potter, but there's so much. Like we were just talking about the ring and how it affects people, the Horcruxes affect them. It's the same thing at the end. Obviously, like, oh, your soul's split up. You're not really like Voldemort's not even really like a full thing, and Sauron's not. It's like it's kind of just ripping it off. But I don't care. I'll eat it up anyways.
Yeah, J.K. was just stealing a lot of shit, and like I've read like apparently there's a lot of like other books that she like stole a lot of shit from. But at the same time, I'm also like, if I'm writing a book now, I'm just going to be stealing shit too, because my mind is like a conglomeration of everything I've absorbed to this point. So like, we're all pulling from something, but I guess you can be more egregious with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like you're gonna get influence, especially like I said, Lord of the Rings influence like every fantasy thing that came after it, whether it's people trying to do Lord of the Rings or like Game of Thrones. I'm gonna be the opposite Lord of the Rings. Like it's still influenced by it, even though it's going for a completely different thing. But there are just like there's some that are like, okay, you're definitely doing. I don't know, like the Wheel of Time. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It is. It might as well be a Lord of the Rings retelling in some ways. Like it has its own obviously story, but it's very similar in a lot like how it starts and everything. It's
Is that show good, Joel?
I have not watched the show.
Okay, gotcha.
I've heard it's
I've only
gotten
made
better.
it through some of the books.
I heard it's gotten better over time. No pun intended.
Just like Rings of Power, but I've not seen an episode yet.
You watch Rings of Power, don't you, Dan?
Yeah, it's fine. It's just like literally fine. It's
just one of those things. I'm sure it is fine, and there's so much to watch. I don't know if I'll ever get to it.
It's not something you need to watch or shouldn't watch. It's just like if you watch it, cool. If not, cool. Like it's just whatever. Is there anything in Return of the King you guys don't like? Because there's a big thing I kind of hate.
There's this character called Sam, which is miserable.
No, I like Sam. Sam's awesome. I just in doses.
Something you hate? What is something I hate?
There's nothing in any of these movies. Like there's little grievances I have, but there's nothing that I'm like, okay, this is just a terrible scene, or this really made me mad. Like I'm trying to think of a specific thing, but overall they're just so well made. But I'm sure you're gonna ruin one of our favorite characters here with your point. So let's hear it.
The thing that's always bothered me is Pelennor Fields, the kind of like climactic battle here, where like the Witch King gets killed and all that, is incredible, right? Until Aragorn shows up with the army of the dead. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. Really, and I hate it every single time. It's not in the books. It doesn't happen. Like it's the most cop out. Like the dead, like climbing up the Oliphant, like, and they're just gone. Like it's so silly.
The Army of the Dead doesn't exist in the book.
It exists, but it only exists to capture the Corsair ships. Those Corsair people, they're like a specific group of people from like this little place in like the Southwest, and like they're a very particular army. They get like wiped out by the dead. And then essentially Aragorn takes their boats, and at that point their oath is fulfilled, because they were basically people when Isildur was before his like last battle. There were a bunch of men that were supposed to fight with them and were like cowards, so they ended up leaving, and he cursed them and basically said they have to stay in this mountain. So that's who that was. So then by helping Aragorn, he's able to release them from that like oath or whatever, but they only help take the boats, and then they're gone. And then Aragorn comes to the battle, and then they keep fighting. Like it's just so silly to me, and it's literally just there to end the fight. And I just
how does the fight end in the book?
They just keep fighting and they win.
Oh well.
But I don't like that. I feel like it's a big cop out, and it looks silly, I think.
I agree that it looks a little silly. I don't mind the change. But like I said, it is just like, I guess the ghost people just like immediately swamping everything. Like it could have at least been slowed down a little bit to be like, okay, they're just immediately covering this whole thing. I don't mind the change. Like it definitely could have been done a little bit better though. But I think that's another one of those things where it's almost like then you start running into extended cut versions where if you change it and keep it exactly how it was, how much longer does this battle just go on? Or does it feel like it ends way too abruptly with them just suddenly winning without that army? There's definitely a way they could have handled it better, but I feel like they just wanted an excuse to kind of end it. And again, like I said, I'm kind of willing to forgive things in this movie because the emotional points I feel like work so well that like whatever shortcuts it tries to take there, I'm willing to forgive a little bit, even though I probably shouldn't, but I don't care.
And like you could have ended it in a different way because he just shows up with people. Like he has another like little army from a different part of Gondor that like came to help, and they're the ones that actually turned the tide. So like you could have still ended it in the same time. It just I hate the like green CGI wave effect. I don't know.
I will say I'll present a different argument as to why I don't like it. Just thinking about it, I hate that they kind of introduce it. Basically, wins the final war, right? They win. The army's like
The battle, yeah.
what wins the very final battle. Without them, they probably would have lost.
I mean, that's not the final battle.
Yeah, but that other one's kind of really not a battle. It lasts like 3 seconds, honestly, on the screen. It doesn't last that long. The one where he's like, for Frodo, wow.
Yeah, I mean the battle actually at like the Black Gate is still it still happens. It basically leads up to the destruction of the ring.
It doesn't feel as climactic though as the other one. Like that other one's like spanned for like 30, 45 minutes, but that the Black Gate's probably like honestly only 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't last very long. Anyways, I was gonna say I don't like that they introduced that army in this movie. It feels like a cop out. It's like there's actually this, like, I wish they would have mentioned, maybe they did in the books, but mentioned this army, if this is where they were going with it, in the Fellowship of the Ring, in the Two Towers, something like that. But it's just like, hey, what's down that path that we just magically came across while we're camped right here? It's like, oh, you don't want to go down there. And they're like, it saves the day. I'm just like, the way they, like, it just randomly pops up in the third movie, I don't like that.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like a plot device.
Exactly. So, wow, thanks for ruining this movie a little bit more for me, dude. But that was kind of my own thoughts, but you initiated it.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's like an actual argument. Unlike the people that are like, oh, why didn't the eagle things just fly them to the thing? I'm like, that is the worst. I didn't watch the movies argument I've ever seen in my life.
It's so stupid. I thought about that because I know that I used to watch those what are those YouTube videos, like how it should have ended, and that's basically what they do and how it should have ended. But the fact that obviously Sauron would have saw them and be like, like shoot him down, or like with his big old dragons. The fact that those eagles are able to fly in is because Sauron is no more.
It's such an obviously explained thing, but I feel like one person just saw someone say it and they're like, oh, that's good enough.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna say the other rumor. I told Dan and Connor about this, that I don't think it's true, but that it's really funny when I think about it at the end. The fact that Frodo might not know Legolas's name. It is kind of funny because I pointed out to them, like, during the initial meeting of the Fellowship of the Ring, they say Legolas's name twice. And Frodo's, like, in that meeting. So I'm like, okay, Frodo knows his name. But then it is kind of funny that out of all those people that meet him at the end are like, oh, we're happy that everyone's here. You know, Frodo's all better. He doesn't say Legolas's name or even mouth it. He's just like, but then Aragorn walks in. You could see Frodo go, Aragorn, like he mouths it. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny. I think that's what everyone alludes to, is the fact that he doesn't say Legolas's name at the very end. He says everyone's name except Legolas.
Maybe
More
you
disrespect
forgot.
for Legolas. It's a shame.
Poor Legolas. Just getting torn apart. Frodo doesn't remember him. We don't like his character. Just got nothing left.
I will say, Dan, your girl might have my favorite moment of this movie. I'm not gonna lie. I am no man. I was like, fuck yeah. That's good. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the more like. I think it's one of the most iconic moments of like women ever in fantasy, really. And it works. I feel like they build up her character really nicely, and it feels like a good payoff. But like I said, it's not really explained in the movie, which like would be nice, but it doesn't really have to be explained, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
It's a little unrealistic to me that she can 1v1 that dude. Just saying, but I feel like he's kind of like, she isn't like supposed to be some great warrior, I don't think.
Well, it's because he already got stabbed. Like that was the entire
Right, that's what you're
Basically, makes him
saying.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Okay.
But he pretty much has like magic that protects him all the time until that wound from Mary. So
You're right. So they don't insinuate that. So he kind of just like got wounded, but there's like a reason behind the sword and everything like that. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, she's
Honestly,
faring pretty well.
It is just funny how it's like, what's the rule called where it's like, oh, two women have to talk to each other, not about a man. What's that called?
Bechdel test.
Yeah, that. How this movie is like the farthest thing. There's like one
Literally
scene,
girls.
like one sentence of a woman talking to a woman, but it's also about a man. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's.
Which I guess
very
is kind of half a segue into a War of the Rohirrim, but
Yeah.
That's a
Not
good
a lot of
segue.
great
Yeah.
female characters.
I would just want to say I like the line, "You guys bow to no one." Just a great line. Just good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Dan's like, actually, I don't really like that part. Let me explain why.
That's cool. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like visually, it's a really cool scene. I like that.
Yeah, because they're short boys, short kings. All right, you guys want to talk about? Is that it? The trilogy's done.
I think so.
We said our
Guess
we
so.
said our piece.
like I said, everybody knows the story. I feel like we don't have to like recap the thing that. Oh, this is how the movie ended. In case anybody forgot how the Lord of the Rings ended.
Yeah, Sauron wins.
I do want to just. I don't know. With you saying Sauron, it just made me think about the fact that they have a really fucking cool Lego set right now that I want to get. I don't know why. I just popped in my head. It's like $700 though, but it's like just the tower and the eye. I'm like,
I
there's
want to start
$100.
getting into that, but the prices are insane. I saw they're releasing a new like Spider-Verse one. It's like a set that's like, I don't know, a little archway or something, and like 3 characters, $50. I'm like, this is like a 25-piece thing, and it's $50.
Silly.
yeah, Legos are for children. I got a Lego set back there, I think.
No, I'm saying the prices are silly.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, the War of the Rohirrim. I did not watch either of your guys' reviews.
Well, I saw your letterbox, and I personally am offended by your rating. I want you to know, just like everyone on the internet, if you don't like a movie I like, that's it. That's the end of the line.
Wait, what did you say about it on Letterboxd?
He just saw. Yeah, I've like
saw a
been really.
rating.
Yeah. I've been really like lazy when it comes to actually writing reviews. I like logged 5 movies like in a span of like 2 seconds. That's what's happened the last couple of weeks. I feel like Connor always looks at my like letterbox just to make sure I'm watching all the movies, and then like an hour before we record the episode, I'm like, oh yeah, and I like logged 6 movies. I'm like, I have watched these. But yeah, I rated this a 2.5.
Yikes.
Which is interesting. And I just have one huge gripe for me. I don't think the animation looks as good as it could have. And I think the reason why that is, like, here's the thing. Do I think the animation looks bad? No. But I don't think that there was any moment that really wowed me where the animation took on a new form and really elevated the scene. Like, they didn't experiment with it as much as I would want them to. And I haven't watched a whole lot of anime, to be honest. I haven't. And it might be a bad example that like the one anime that I watched is Akira, which is very different, and really goes all out when it comes to its visuals, and it just goes sicko mode, to be honest. But I don't know, and I've read a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of stuff that says that they kind of rushed this movie. I guess that they needed to get this movie out in a certain amount of time in order to keep the rights. I believe this is Warner Brothers, in order to keep the rights to be making theatrical films for The Lord of the Rings, which is why people think they're making the Hunt for Gollum and stuff like that. It's kind of similar to the Sonyverse. And that would make sense if the animation wasn't as good as it could have been, if they did rush the process at all. Another thing, too, is I think The Lord of the Rings for me is, we didn't talk about it, but I think it's discovering Middle Earth. it's going through Middle Earth in this journey, and every single film you get to see something new and exciting and adventurous, right? And for me in this film, I didn't see really anything new. Like it just felt like I don't know, because I know this story. Like the main character, she's made up, correct?
No.
Yeah, she exists.
Okay, so does this? Okay, we didn't talk about this. So the Silmarillion, right?
Silmarillion, yeah.
So is that where the Helm? What's his name? Helm Hammer fits?
No, he's in the Helm Hammerhand is in the appendix of Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
there's some other mentionings here and there, but he's in the appendix, and then he has two sons, Hama and I forget the other one's name, and then he has a daughter. You're thinking of the fact like she wasn't like named, so basically they said she's Hera, and then they filled out the story from there.
Right. This whole story is completely made up, correct?
No.
It's like
Besides-
based on what was mentioned, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was mentioning of it in the appendixes, but they just said we're gonna kind of fill in the dots, like
Yeah,
connect
basically
the dots.
they expanded on her character, but they just tell the story of what happened to Helm and his sons, etc. But they give
Right.
you
They tell it through her, basically.
yeah.
Like the backdrop of what happens
He's a
is
character
all
that
actual
he's a
stuff.
character that can live and see the events actually occur. So that makes sense that because since everyone else dies.
Yeah, I guess just I didn't really get like I didn't really feel the backstory of her and Wolf. I thought that was really rushed, and I feel like that's the entire crux of this whole film. Is you're supposed to feel. I feel like I didn't feel as much as I should have, because supposedly these guys are really good friends, and obviously this huge battle is between the two of them, really. And I will say that Brian Cox as Helm is really great, by the way. Just want to shoot that in there. I love Brian Cox in this movie. But I think her as a character is just not that interesting to me. And she does have this, I'm going to completely contradict myself. She does have this interesting arc where she doesn't want anything. She doesn't want power. She just kind of wants to live. Like she doesn't even ask to fight. She just wants to help. I think that's really interesting. But then at the end, she becomes like this elite warrior that can take Wolf one-on-one, which I don't know. I just, like I said, I think the main thing is I don't think she's as interesting as a character to carry this entire story. I would have rather this have been about Helm, and a lot of it is, but I don't know. I couldn't get behind her.
I think your complaint, like, I don't think that complaint necessarily makes sense. I think it's the same thing you said about Eowyn, and like you're ignoring the fact that these people are like built around warfare. And like they're fighting from literally the age of like from the time they're children. So like that's their culture, and I think it shows that with both of those characters, in regards to them being able to handle themselves with like weapons. And it literally this movie makes a pretty large point of talking about the Shield Maidens and like how that's a big part of Rohan's legacy. So and I feel like we even see them fighting when they're kids in the movie. I'm pretty sure.
No, I would disagree because I think this is a time of peace. I'm almost positive. We see them practicing with each other, but we don't actually. I think this is a time of peace because I think everything that happens with Wolf and his father, that's when the warfare starts. I don't think there's anything going on.
No, but I'm saying like they're like warrior people. Like they grow up learning how to fight, and like the movie shows you that with her. Like it goes out of its way to establish that around her character. And
I got you.
Eowyn
Like
was the same exact way.
Like I said, I just think that this takes place in Middle Earth, and I think it's just the confines of the story itself. It just didn't feel as big and as large and as adventurous as it could have been. I think most of it's in the eventual Helm's Deep or Rohan. That's like the majority of where the story is. And I don't know. Like I said, I think they're depending a lot on what you've seen in the Lord of the Rings, as in Oliphant, and there's a random scene that they added with orcs, and I even the director or the writer, I saw an interview where they literally said, "Yeah, we just feel like we needed a moment in the story where there was orcs in there. What is Lord of the Rings without orcs?" But I feel like if you're really going to create this stuff about Hera, what else is in the Silmarillion or the appendices? Creatures, anything that I haven't seen before. Places that you could go with this character, create this new story. and it just felt like rehashing of stuff I've already seen.
Well, like where? Like, what are you talking about?
I don't know. I don't know any of the lore of the Lord of the Rings. I don't know if there's anything else they could have used besides Hera. Like use Hera and also other parts of Middle Earth. I don't know if there's anything around there that wasn't explored or not. I'm just saying if that's it, that's it. But I can't help but think that I'm more invested when they weren't confined to a structure. Like it makes sense why you love it because you were saying you love Rohan so much, right? In the Two Towers. I didn't per se love that. I love that when they were more adventuring in Middle Earth rather than in one singular location.
I have no idea where my camera went. I'll figure that out in a second. But I was gonna say, I get that complaint, but I feel like it's just me going back to like I was saying earlier. I kind of like the personal like scale of this, where it's like if that relationship between her and Wolf didn't work for you, I understand that, and it is a little bit rushed. But like her being able to beat Wolf isn't like, oh, she's overpowering him. It's like she's been able to beat him and kind of had this power over him since they were kids. And even though the flashback is done very quickly, again, I feel like it's kind of just what the story is trying to tell. And I understand it not working, but I didn't mind that kind of being done quickly and just establishing like, oh, this is the story between these two characters. And I was able to buy into it. I thought Wolf was just an entertaining villain, honestly. Like, I didn't think he was like the most fleshed out character, and the connection could have been more. But I kind of like just a complete lunatic villain that's just like, I know no ends, and I just hate. Like, it's kind of refreshing. And I was able to buy into like, yeah, Hera's not the most interesting character, but like you're just saying, it's not like Sam's the most interesting, or Frodo's not the most interesting character in the Lord of the Rings. He's like the main one. Like, it's more about Helm, Hammerhand, and the other pieces. And I didn't mind it at all personally. Like, I kind of liked just diving into these characters' story. Like, my friend I watched it with, he was also like had the same complaints, kind of like he didn't like the animation at all, which I understand. The first 20 minutes, like I said in my review, looks pretty terrible. I think it settles in fine. I don't know if I just adjusted or if the first 20 minutes was like what they rushed through on a cheaper budget or something, but I think the animation settled in. I don't really care that it wasn't about the big war of the Rohirrim like the title is. I think that's the mistake of the movie is like making people think it's going to be about that. So I totally understand all the problems people have with it, but they didn't really take away from my enjoyment. I kind of like just the smaller scale story set in the universe, I know, instead of trying to explore into new worlds and lands and stuff.
Yeah, they're also just like I said earlier, there really isn't that much to explore into, and that's I think kind of one of the problems. But I agree with you, Joel. I think a lot of times the mistake here is trying to do something big or grand or like, and I think that's kind of what Rings of Power does, and it tries to do bite off a little more than it can chew. I like stories that I actually care about, and I think if you're gonna go back into a world like this, I want a personal small scale story because then I can actually like be invested in it. I think it's not even really about like Wolf and Hera, like their relationship does matter, but it's not really about that. It's more so about Helm and Freka and Wolf, because when Helm kills Freka, like that causes something to change in Wolf that he literally is going through the entire movie to try to just avenge his dad. And like you see kind of how that completely takes over whoever he might have been and just changes him. And I think you see Helm is like an ignorant jackass. Like he's a moron. Like he is a good king in some ways, and he's very like he's a strong warrior, but he's like an old man that can't tolerate like disrespect from someone who isn't even like relevant and has no power. And because of that, he has to kill Freka, and then everyone else suffers, and he loses his sons, and his daughter gets to watch all that happen. And everyone just goes through so much because he couldn't control himself, and his pride, and Freka's pride too, and then Wolf's. And I think what you see in Hera is someone who actually should be leading because she's not like reactionary. She's not concerned with like pride or this and that. She's actually intelligent. Like you see her use her brain to get out of certain situations. Like, You said there weren't any sequences of animation that really caught your eye. I thought everything with everything around creatures like the Mumakil, I thought that looked incredible. I thought the sound was awesome there. And when she's like leads it into the forest, and then there's like a watcher in the water there that kills the elephant, I thought that was really, really cool.
I thought that looked good.
Yeah, I was gonna point to that. It's like a visually like, because again, this does seem like something that could have been done in live action, honestly, because there wasn't that much. But I do think there are things that do look really good in this movie, and some of the like just scenery and like a split-second shot. But I think there were genuinely like stunning looking moments. It's definitely not the best looking animated thing, but I feel like it's intentionally kind of going for like that 80s 90s anime style that like it's not trying to be like modern anime like a Jujutsu Kaisen or something that has like insane, or Demon Slayer, like all these insane fight scenes at 1,000,000 frames per second. Like it's not trying to be that, it's trying to just imitate that style, I feel like. And maybe that is because of budget constraints, but I didn't mind it.
And I also feel like it makes it feel like more of an homage to the other animated Lord of the Rings features, like from the 80s and whatnot. But I think like everything with Helm, like the way he dies, like that entire sequence is
That's really good.
Insane.
Yeah.
I loved that. I think, and to me, I mean, everything around, like even the battle where they kind of draw them out of Edoras and then attack like behind them. I feel like it felt like there were real stakes. Like people were dying. It felt like, actually like important, and I feel like it was interesting strategy there as well. I liked that whole sequence, and I liked kind of the siege at Helm's Deep. I thought that was cool how they showed like how slowly paced that was. I thought it was cool, like
they were just randomly building a tower. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Tower, yeah, and then Helm kind of like leaving to be this like guerrilla warfare like vigilante, just like killing people. I thought that was sick. I watched Jeremy Johns talk about it. He was like, "Oh, wasn't he like he was so sick, and then he somehow like fight like." They literally say in the fucking movie, "Oh, like his body is completely fine. He's like, it's his mind that's suffering. He's like basically grieving and upset." So I don't know. I think the movie kind of lays out all of its reasoning, and I thought it was really entertaining because I like personal stories, and I feel like it had a lot to say about like leadership and what's good there and what's not. So
I feel like it gets into some of the darker elements we were talking about, like with Fellowship, where like the stuff where he's out in the night, and like I thought those sequences were done really well. Where it's not like a horror sequence, obviously, but it's got a little bit darker, and like and everything with all the winter, I loved all that stuff. I just thought it was done well visually, and I don't know, I was a sucker for I fell into the characters, I guess. It is about Helm, really. Like, maybe that is the mistake of the movie for kind of making it about him and him not being like one of the, like, he's like the third main character kind of behind Wolf and Hera, but I think it was effective still.
Yeah, because I think it presents him through like a relationship where him and his daughter really care about each other, and there's a lot of love there, and he's like trying to protect her. So I think like with her, it presents him to you in a way where like you see that he's very flawed, but at the same time like you can appreciate him, and you do understand that like he is like a decent man and like trying to do the right thing, but he just has flaws, which I think makes him interesting. There was one other thing I wanted to say that I'm not remembering, but
I would say something that really bothers me, and it's kind of the whole driving force of the movie, is we've talked about the fact that Wolf kind of goes crazy, right, with the death of his father. I'm trying to remember. I don't really think there's like one scene of him and his father conversating really at all, which I find that very interesting. I feel like would be like a simple decision to show what kind of bond that Freka and him have at all. It's kind of like just, oh, he's his dad, so that's kind of why he does it. But I don't know. You really don't see how close they are in a relationship. The only way you get to see that is they both think that he should marry Hera, that's it. Like they just show up and then it happens right away, and it's just boom.
I mean, I don't think you have to explain to someone that like someone killing your dad in front of you would like cause you to be upset. You know what I mean? Like I think that
I feel
unless
like
there's
his
a reason for that.
reaction is them telling you their bond in a way, like without having that scene showing how much it affects someone. If they don't have that bond, he's not going to have that reaction immediately when it happens. Going after Helm, he's not going to lose his mind and turn into like this evil psycho. Like,
Yeah. Also, how did do women not get married off a lot in Lord of the Rings? Because it seemed like it was really casual for Helm to be like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna marry Hera to someone in Gondor," and then she's like, "What the fuck? You're gonna marry me to someone?" Like, I feel like maybe that might have been a tradition or something like that, which I didn't like that. I felt like everything when it comes to Hera's backstory, I thought because it is he had a daughter, right, and you can create whatever type of story you want to around her. The fact that it's just she's she's a princess who has a wild side, who her dad wants to marry off to a guy, and but this guy wants to marry her. It seemed very traditional and expected, which it's just I don't know. I expected to have something maybe more interesting. Like I've seen that story before. Like we've all seen that, like a storyline that like that before, just not in Lord of the Rings. So I feel like if you had an opportunity to create this whole story around this character that you just know the existence of, it could have been a little
I
bit
think
more
you can say
interesting.
that about pretty much anything. Like you've seen every story before. I guess it's just like if that story bothers you or not, or if that story like is interesting to you or not, then you'll like it. But I mean, I think you can say that about any kind of like medieval slash fantasy. It's just gonna be a tropey story. Like that's kind of what these things are.
I don't know.
But
I just feel like if I didn't attach Lord of the Rings to it, and I told you what I just told you about the story about a fair maiden or a princess that was supposed to get married off, you just be like, oh, okay. Like,
but what if I say like name another one that this kind of thing happens and she goes off and becomes kind of this like warrior? Is there something that immediately comes to your mind, or do you just feel like it's tropey because it's like?
I feel like it's tropey. I mean, I don't watch a whole lot of princess. I guess that's princess movies. I don't know.
so you're saying this was new to you?
Oh gosh, there we go.
We boxed you in. We got you. You're no longer legally allowed to dislike this or like Sam. Those opinions are gone.
You were on. You said Sam was your favorite too for a second.
I like Sam too, but no, that's also gone. Disproved. Hate him now.
What the hell?
He's
What the
gone.
hell? Oh gosh.
Yeah, plus I just think also like on top of I think maybe this is like there's a lot of nuance to the story and there's a lot of different like personal layers to it that I think are really like fleshed out nicely. Plus this is also just like it's telling a piece of Rohan's history. Like it's not like the story itself isn't just like they came up with it. Like it's part of the history of Middle Earth. And I think you said, well, there's orcs here for no reason. The orcs are not there for no reason. The orcs are there to show that they're looking for the ring, which is to set up the fact that they're going to meet Gandalf, which is to set up another movie. So like I don't really like that was made pretty clear as to why they were there. And
I would say literally like the writer, someone said like I feel like the story had to have orcs, and then if we had orcs, like how can we include them in some way? So
yeah, but they clearly explained that they were looking for rings and that
right.
Sauron, and then again like at the end of the movie,
It's a little Easter egg. That's what it is. It's a little Easter egg.
But I think ideally they're trying to set up another movie, and I think they already have talked about that. I guess if this can make money, which it probably won't. But I think the thought was that's supposed to lead into a new story, which maybe could, they could write something new or go off and tell something different because they're not having to tell the story of Helm. Which I mean I would like to see, but it's I guess not going to happen. But.
Well, I will say I felt obviously we're in spoilers, right? Because we've been talking about everything. So I don't think Saruman and the Gandalf name drop both kind of land like thuds for me. I feel like where that's just like a real wink at the audience. It doesn't ruin anything in the movie for me. I'm just like this did not need to happen. I understand why, and they connect it well enough that it makes sense that it happened, but it was just obviously like everybody that's there likes Lord of the Rings anyways. I feel like you didn't have to throw them that bone of like, oh, who's the wizard we're going to see? Big, oh my god, it's Gandalf. Like, okay, yay, everybody clap now. Like,
I feel like I felt that way with Saruman. Like, just there's no reason to really include him. I mean,
that's also Christopher Lee's voice.
Yeah,
I don't know how they did that, but I guess they just used audio from the original trilogy.
I mean, he does have a lot of impact on Rohan, so like I get it, and like I said, he is right next door. I think the Gandalf thing makes more sense. You can just present it in a more casual way. Like if you want to make a sequel and that's the story you're going to tell, just you don't have to like dance around it. Just say it. But yeah, I agree on Saruman. I think
it was definitely like the MCU. Like everybody applaud. Here's your 2 cameos. This is your big moment. Like, I don't know. I did feel that kind of way. I don't think we're going to get another one, though, because it seems like the reception's very mixed on this, too. Like, not even that it's just not making money. The people that have seen it, it seems like more people are leaning towards your view of, like, mixed on it, which it's fine.
I will say, why do you guys think people aren't watching it in the first place? It's fine that it's mixed reviews, but...
I think anime, the anime style, I think, is simply...
See, people watch anime. Like people watch anime in the theater.
The overlap, I don't think, is there from the people interested in the original Lord of the Rings films and something in the style. Maybe if it was released just on streaming, it would probably be bigger. Honestly, I think more people would give it a chance. But this is not like a kids' film that people are going to see, which is where a lot of animated movies make. I mean, kids could go and see it, but I don't think they're gonna care. And I don't think the older Lord of the Rings fans are going to go and give this a shot. I don't know. It's very different. Like the anime films that make money they make their money in Japan, really, mainly, and like overseas, I feel like.
Well, say The Boy and the Heron made like 22 million, I think, its opening weekend. I mean, it's like One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, Dragon Ball, like Demon Slayer. Like, I'm just looking at the numbers here. Like, they make a lot of money now. And I think what happens is, this is trying to go for 2 audiences, right? It's trying to go for Lord of the Rings fans. It's trying to go for anime fans. That's what it's trying to do. And I think anime fans are looking at this anime and being like, that looks like shit, to be honest. I don't think they think this looks good. And they're like, okay, I'm not going to go fucking see the anime then, and whatever. But then Lord of the Rings are looking at the story. The fans are looking at the story, and they're like, they don't really care about that either. So then who's left over? I know you guys are Lord of the Rings fans, and you checked it out.
Like you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, really, and I know it. So like, I almost feel like the opposite of what you're saying, where I feel like actual Lord of the Rings fans will appreciate seeing the history, and like maybe the people more in kind of the middle, or people that just like in passing like the movies will not care as much. I think it's, but I agree with what you're saying, maybe about like anime, like, you know, people. I do get that.
The Battle of the Five Armies, right, came out 10 years ago, and it made almost $1 billion. So how is this thing only like, those are Lord of the Rings fans? That's a shitty movie. That's a shitty movie at the end of a shitty trilogy, and still it almost made $1 billion. It makes me think of Jurassic World Dominion.
That's different though. Like that's also The Hobbit, and it's also like we just talked about. That's the third act. It's the huge conclusion of 2 other movies that made a ton of money. And like tons of people have read The Hobbit. This isn't telling a story that like most people are even aware of. Like,
but you would assume that those fans, though, in some way, would carry over better than to a $4 million opening weekend.
I would. But the thing is, because it's 10 years later and it's anime.
Well, I also think
it's just a story that's disconnected. Like,
this, and not that Craven was ever going to make money, but I think these also have been buried by still the Thanksgiving, Wicked, Moana, Gladiator. Like half the comments on both these reviews for mine were like, oh, this is out. I didn't even know this was out. Like they've been buried under these huge releases. I think people don't even know they exist.
Dude, you know what it's getting buried under? Interstellar. My theater is not showing this movie or Craven at night. It is showing Interstellar for 2 showings each night, IMAX. It is not showing this. And IMAX makes the most money. It's the most expensive ticket. And it's crazy because when you walk into my theater, there's literally this giant structure that has this huge poster in it. It's like an IMAX poster. And it said Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. The only time it played during IMAX was at noon. That entire day was at noon. Then it played one showing of Craven and 2 showings of Interstellar. And it's crazy. As I was just looking at it, they only made this release in 2,600 theaters, which is not a lot. Usually, a wide release is like 4,000 theaters. So it seemed like Warner Brothers really didn't have a lot of faith in this to begin with, which just hurts its box office as well. Because another thing they did, which surprised a lot of people, is they released the first 8 minutes of it, which I know that's what the Sony movies have been doing. But when you don't have faith in a movie, I feel like you have nothing to lose if you just put the first 10 minutes of that out there.
I never understand that. I'm like, do they not understand that like a 30-second edit on TikTok gets more people to comment like, oh, what's this movie? I'm gonna watch it than like the first 8 minutes. If you're not interested in something, 8 minutes, you're not even gonna watch it. Like, you need to get like one clippable soundbite, as bad as it is, and like get it out there in the world, and that's what makes people interested in things now. But also just how this tying back into the anime, like I'm assuming you guys haven't watched like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, but those movies were direct ties into like, here's the end of a season or the early episodes of the next season of an existing direct thing that happened. This is just kind of dropped on its own as like a semi prequel, not really just a random story. So it didn't, even though there are Lord of the Rings fans, this didn't have a built-in like, oh, I need to go see this. A lot of people will just check it out when it comes on digital, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I also think there's just like, there's an element of people and like people in my comments and shit that are just like fucking brain dead and they're like, oh, it's woke, it's a woman. And it's like, if you just change Hera's character to a man, a lot of them would go watch it and be like, this is sick. And it's like, it just, like I said, completely fucking brain dead. But that's just the world we live in today. So
yeah,
I was wrong.
Woke. It's insane.
I would say I just watched the new trailer for Naughty Dog's new game, which looks kind of sick, like Intergalactic, and I was like, this looks fucking cool. Didn't know people were upset that it's a woman with a shaved head. I was like, why does it matter? People are like, this is not what we want. Like, you don't even know the fucking game. The game hasn't even come out yet.
Well, like The Witcher 4.
Like, what is wrong with y'all?
Now on Siri, who I don't know how familiar you are with the Witcher series, but like, she is like the main character, kind of like this girl and her, and it's setting her up to be like the next Witcher, and that's what the game's doing, and people are mad about it now. It's like, it's become so bad.
Whatever. Let's just get Deadpool, Wolverine. I don't know. People watch that.
yeah,
two male white dudes.
Nice and safe. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, it was a fun experience though to watch this in the theaters, to revisit Middle Earth. It really was. I'm really curious though what they're going to do with the Hunt for Gollum. I don't know. With this
honestly
reception,
would rather more stuff like this than
yeah.
bringing back Aragorn and doing that stuff again. That like, that will make more money, but I don't know.
That's also going to be super expensive. This is cheap. This was only a $30 million budget. I thought it was 90. It's not 90. That was the original, the Fellowship of the Ring. This was like 30 million. So even though it did have a low opening weekend, it doesn't look like they marketed it much. So who knows? Maybe they will be in the green. Maybe not as much as they wanted to.
Well, if Morbius can make money, what can't make money?
Wait, I saw like an article. They're desperately trying to like convince people that it made money or something like that. That's what like the Twitter post I've been seeing.
Yeah,
it's like Sony swears.
What, Craven?
No, that Morbius made money. Literally, there's Twitter posts that are like,
they probably like sold the rights to Netflix for an insane amount, and I think it was like top 10 on Netflix, because if you put anything on Netflix, it will be watched.
Yep,
that's how it works.
Very true. Speaking of which, do you guys want to get into our recommendations? Do you want to recommend a movie? I was gonna say, I watched Carry On. I think it's a good movie. I think people are blowing it out of water just a little bit. It's like a new thriller. A lot of people have compared it to Die Hard, but a new, because it's like a Christmas action movie. It's like an action movie that takes place on Christmas.
That's what I'm gonna do.
It's like a secret Christmas movie. It's like that's what like Taron Egerton, like all the people marketing this film are like, it's like Die Hard. Now here's the thing. Dan knows this from a recent episode. I just watched Die Hard for the very first time. It's not the same as Die Hard. but I think it's okay. I like Taron Egerton. I also really like Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman's like the villain in it, and he talks a lot. I think Jason Bateman's a very good talker. He's really easy to listen to. So I think it's a solid movie, and it's going to be the number one movie for the next week that people are going to watch, especially during the holidays. But yeah, Carry On. I think it's okay. I think people should check it out.
This isn't my recommendation. I'll do my like 20 like I did last time. But have you guys seen Arrested Development? Speaking of Jason Bateman, or no?
Bits and pieces. Yeah.
I haven't.
I love the first 3 seasons of that. And then Netflix picked it back up, and it's terrible. But it's just what they do.
Shout out
Hopefully they don't
Netflix.
watch this. Give me a brand deal.
I said I just applied to be press, so hopefully I don't check out my give up this episode. I just said Carry On was pretty good. I said Carry On was pretty good. That was Vets. That wasn't me.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person in the world that's gonna be like, I'm gonna be the only content creator to see Nosferatu like regular opening day, and it's gonna kill me.
It's driving me crazy too. Don't worry.
Well, the thing is, I got invited to an NYC premiere, or like a showing. I'm not doing the trip for it. I'm not spending
Wait, Joel, where are you again?
Oh, yeah, I was just about to say because your bio says New York and LA.
Yeah, because I want the invites to that stuff. But I'm from Buffalo, but that's
okay.
an hour and a half plane ride, which is like $350 to stay near the theater.
No,
I'd be spending $1,000 for an advanced showing. It's not even like a premiere or anything with a cast. Like, no, I'll wait. They did not find me. My screeners, that's okay then. I'll forgive them. But for a recommendation, I'm going to say Adventureland is my movie. It's by the director of Superbad. It's not a comedy though, really. Like, it has comedy elements. It's more kind of like slice of life romance almost. Jesse Eisenberg, Kristen Stewart. And it just, the movie feels so, it's actually, it would have been perfect. I watched it like right after our last one on Deadpool Wolverine. It would have been the perfect, not a regular Ryan Reynolds recommendation. Like there's some elements of it in there, but it's like, he's a very minor character. When he showed up, it like jump scared me. I was like, what is Ryan Reynolds doing in this movie? But he's just kind of like doing this very small role. I love the movie. It probably hit me hard because it's like these kids working at Adventureland right after like between college graduation and grad school. And I watched it right after I graduated. So it probably hit me harder. But I just think the relationship between those two works so perfectly in the movie. Like the soundtrack's great. One of my favorite first time watches of the year.
Nice.
Yeah, I heard it's really good.
What's coming out soon? I saw you make your review and glow about this. The Count of Monte Cristo, absolutely blew me away. That movie. It's coming out.
I think I'm watching it tonight at work, which is terrible. But I gotta watch it at work. But I'm gonna watch it at work.
It blew me away.
I'm so happy people are like liking it. I thought it was so much fun.
Did you email him back then, like you told me you're going to? You're going to email your video?
Yes, I did.
Tell Joel.
Yeah, no, they emailed me, and
We're
I was
going to
like,
after recording.
yeah, no, it's fine. But they emailed me, and I basically was like, no, I already saw this. This is like my favorite movie of the year, and I sent them the video I made, and they were like, okay, well, do you want to like review it again? So I was like, yes, but give me some money, and they said yes. So I'm excited for that. But yeah,
Nice.
really good
Cool,
movie.
cool.
And just like fun. Were you familiar with the story, Joel? Or
No, I'd never read or watched anything like it, so it's my first entry in. So I don't know if it's a good or bad first entry, but it got me invested in it. I'll probably check out other adaptations and maybe the book. I feel like the story would be so fun to take in if you don't know like all the twists and turns. Like it's because it's so much, it's so entertaining and just there's a lot to it. Yeah, it was good.
I was like, I don't know anything about the story, so I'm pumped.
Yeah, I was just going along with the ride. It looks great. I love the score. Like, just I wish I saw it in like a giant theater, but I watched it on my sick little 24-inch monitor. But oh well.
Yeah, I watched it. I had a wedding the night before, and I stayed out there, and I literally got up. I was like the most hungover I've been in like years, and I drove like an hour and barely got there on time, and it was still so enjoyable. It was sick. But
so I had to say that Joel, did you watch Y2K? You've mentioned Superbad. Did you watch
I did
Y2K?
not.
I didn't think.
I'm not
I didn't
wasting
think it
my
was very
time. I honestly just decided I don't care. There's other stuff. Nobody's gonna care if I review it. I realized I don't want to just go sit there for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's not good. I told Dan it's like it doesn't make any sense because it's being compared to Superbad a whole lot. You have Rachel Zegler, which is like one of the main
Yeah.
actors. Like nothing on her, but she's not a comedian. Like she's not a comedy actress. So I don't know why you would try to put her at the front of a comedy. That just doesn't make sense to me. And there's like more actors in the movie like that. I'm just like, what is this casting decisions? Like what are we doing here? But whatever. Anyways, Dan, what you got? Dan watches so many fucking movies. I'm glad that his letterbox is live now. Good Lord, it's like 2 a.m. He like logged another one.
And
He does
I'll
not
wake
sleep.
up, like I'll go to sleep at 2, see some letterbox log, wake up at like whatever 9, 10. I'm like, there's another 2 movies log. What's this guy doing? I'm like,
Dad's like, I was hungover too.
No, but no, I watched Snake Eyes, which is a Brian De Palma movie, and it's actually streaming on Prime Video with Nick Cage, and it's really, really good. Basically, it's Gary Sinise too, is the other main actor. He's basically a cop at a fight in Atlantic City, and there's an assassination while he's there. And it's kind of like Trap almost in a way, where they like shut everything down and no one can leave, but it's actually good, and no one can leave.
so you're talking to the world's biggest Trap fans here, definitely for sure. That's
but basically they then try to figure out like what happened and why this assassination happened, and like there's some like intrigue around the like fight itself, and like if the fight was like thrown, and it ties into the investigation, and it's so insane. But it's a really fun movie. Nick Cage is like really going big with it, so I would say I feel like you guys would both like it a lot. But it's called Snake Eyes.
I also got to throw in. I said last time, but I got to continue convincing people, since this is an anime movie, anyways, to watch Attack on Titan.
Hey, the War of the Rohirrim. There you go.
Ties in, but everybody needs to watch Attack on Titan, even if you're not an anime person. It's like what won me over to anime. Like, it is by far the best I've seen and probably will ever see. It's one of my favorite TV shows ever made. And the first episode, like the first season, takes like a little bit to get going, but the first episode itself is like one of my favorite first episodes ever. It hooks you in so perfectly.
One day, we're gonna have you back on, and me and Dan will both have watched the very first episode. Guarantee that right now.
Where can you watch it, Joel?
It's on Crunchyroll 1000%, but I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix.
Okay.
Or it was at least a while ago. Like, it's kind of weird how it's broken up. All different animes are like, oh, the first 2 seasons are on Netflix and 3 and 4 are on Hulu, but they're all on Crunchyroll 100%.
Okay. Cool.
Nice. All right. Welcome back, Joel. Welcome back, Vets Movies. Thanks for coming back on the pod yet again.
Yeah.
Yes, glad to be here.
Okay.
I guess I should have said my rating was a 4 out of 5 for War of Rohirrim. I just realized I never actually gave a rating for it, but
Yeah, same. I do think, I mean, just like visually there is some jankiness, and it like sometimes the way things move just it looks a bit weird. But I think, like you said, Joel, I just kind of was like, this is what this movie looks like, and I'm just gonna try to enjoy it, and I did. So yeah. Maybe go see it if you maybe go
glowing endorsement.
I would recommend it. I would recommend
Yeah, you won't see it in IMAX though. Hurry quick, because it's probably going to be out of theaters very fast, especially with everything coming, like 50 movies coming out on December 25th.
Yeah.
But Joel, Vets, thanks for coming on, man. Tell everyone where they can find you, especially maybe the other things that aren't TikTok.
So it's at Vets Movies on everything else, especially YouTube. That's where I'm going to focus on if things go away. I just hit 85K over there.
Nice.
I have all the same shorts, but the long forms, like my same ideas pretty much, just in less brain rot versions, like 5 to 10 minutes instead of like a minute 20. So if you like anything that's shorter, all the longer stuff's on there. So go watch that when TikTok gets deleted. Hit 300K just in time. For
We gotta be positive.
Yeah. No, it'll come back. I believe. I'll cope.
Well, next week we're going to be talking about our favorite Christmas movies, so stay tuned for that because I know Dan's not going to pick Home Alone because fun fact, Dan does not like Home Alone.
Or Christmas Story.
Wow,
Dan
we
is
got a Grinch over here.
The Grinch, yeah, Mr.
I don't
Scrooge.
like the Grinch either.
Like Jim Carrey's?
No, I hate it.
Cancel the episode, honestly. Just kick him off. No, his
It's
own
going to be
pod.
Big Cutter. But yeah, so that'll be fun to do next week. But yet again, thanks Vets Movies, Joel, for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me.
everyone, Merry Christmas for the next couple of weeks, but we will be back next Monday with a new episode. So stay tuned for that. But until then, go outside this week, talk to your friends, sit on a park bench, touch some grass, and we'll see you then. Peace.